The drive should have been peaceful. A quiet road, endless fields, and the occasional mailbox. But tonight, the world looked like it wanted to swallow itself whole. Rain slammed against the windshield, and the wipers were fighting a losing battle. The headlights barely cut through the storm, illuminating nothing but mud, trees, and the endless churn of water. It was the kind of night where bad things happened. The pastor gripped the wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white as he muttered under his breath. The call had come in an hour ago. An old farmer on the outskirts of town was at death's door. No family, no friends, just an old house, a creaking barn, and the slow drip of time. It was his duty to go. That's what he told himself. Lightning cracked overhead as the house finally appeared at the end of the road. One flickering porch light swayed in the wind, casting long, shifting shadows across the flooded dirt. The pastor sighed. This feels cursed. He stepped out of the car, his boots sinking instantly into the mud. He trudged forward, pulling his coat tighter as the wind howled through the empty fields. He knocked once. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, the house was too quiet. The air smelled damp, like old wood and forgotten things. An oil lamp flickered weakly on the table, barely pushing back the dark. Then, a cough. A wet, rattling thing coming from the next room. "About time," the old man yelled. The pastor stepped forward, boots squeaking on the warped floorboards. He followed the sound to a small bedroom and stopped. The farmer lay in bed, barely more than bones under a blanket. His skin was waxy and bruised in places where it shouldn't be. His hands, twisted and wrong, gripped the covers like they were the only thing anchoring him to this world. And his ears were gone. Just two jagged, infected stumps where they used to be. Blood had dried into dark streaks down the side of his neck. His head twitched slightly, like he was listening. The pastor swallowed. How did that man hear him come in? The farmer's sunken eyes slid toward him. Doesn't matter, the farmer croaked, as if replying to the pastor's thought. His lips barely moved, but his throat rattled. You gonna do this or not? The pastor's skin prickled. He gazed over the man's misshapen arms, the bruises over his ribs, the way his legs lay completely still under the covers. A man didn't get injuries like that from illness. The pastor's stomach knotted. He fell. No, he jumped. His mouth felt dry. You tried to. Didn't work, the farmer rasped. He wasn't looking at the pastor anymore. His eyes had gone distant, like he was watching something behind him. The pastor didn't dare turn around. A gust of wind hit the house, rattling the windows. The candle flame shook violently, making the shadows lurch. The pastor reached into his coat, pulling out his small leather book. This is fine. Just another dying man, desperate to make peace before the end. You wanted your last rites? The farmer exhaled sharply. His cheek twitched. Yeah, won't do much good, though. Another one who doesn't believe, the pastor thought to himself. The old man laughed, but it was breathless, a whisper of a sound, like something moving through dry leaves. Oh, I believe, the farmer murmured. I just know he ain't listening. The pastor frowned. He was almost positive he didn't say his last thought out loud. That's not true. The farmer's eyes slid back to him. And tell me why I've been hearing them. The crack of thunder boomed through the house. The pastor stiffened. Hearing who? The farmer's breathing hitched. His fingers flexed under the blanket. His lips moved, but not in time with his voice. They whisper, the old man rasped, but his lips never said it. The pastor opened his mouth. The farmer's body arched. His mouth fell open in a soundless scream. His chest heaved, ribs pushing up against his skin, like something was pulling from the inside. His eyes, wild, desperate, locked onto the pastor's. Then, the scream hit. But not through the pastor's ears. It slammed into his skull like a church bell ringing in reverse. A sound that wasn't a sound. A force that wasn't a force. The impact nearly made the pastor retch. His vision blurred at the edges, the room tilted. Then it was gone. Silence. The old man collapsed back onto the bed. The pastor gasped, chest heaving, fingers clenched so tightly around his book that the leather creaked. The lamp flickered once, then held steady. The house was just a house again. The storm hadn't stopped. The wind still roared outside. The candle flame still danced weakly. Nothing had changed, except him. But the pastor didn't know that yet. He exhaled slowly, and then, because this was still his job, he gently closed the farmer's eyes. The funeral happened a few days later. It was small. A handful of townfolk stood under a gray sky, heads bowed, hands folded. The wind had finally gone still. The pastor stood at the head of the grave, Bible in hand. His voice carried low and steady as he spoke the final rites, the words as familiar to him as breathing. The farmer had no family to claim him, no visitors to say goodbye, no one except a few neighbors, an old friend or two, and the pastor himself. And the grave was shallow. The town's gravedigger had mentioned it in passing earlier, something about the body being fragile. The pastor had nodded. He hadn't asked questions. The coffin was lowered, the dirt followed. The mourners lingered only briefly before heading back down the hill. Soon, it was just the pastor and the gravedigger. The man wiped his forehead, looking down at the freshly packed soil. "Strange thing," he muttered. "Do you see his ears?" The pastor kept his gaze fixed forward. He had seen them. The man chuckled uneasily. "Must have been real desperate to stop hearing things." The gravedigger silently mused to himself. "Well, guess it don't matter now," the pastor replied, as if words had been spoken. The gravedigger looked at the pastor, perplexed. He exhaled sharply, tossing his shovel over his shoulder. The pastor, unaware of what transpired, pulled his coat tighter against the cold. "Thank you for your work." The gravedigger nodded, muttering something about rain before heading off down the hill. The pastor stayed a moment longer. A question gnawed at the edge of his mind. He still couldn't figure out how that farmer heard him enter the house without ears. The wind stirred at his back, just enough to send a slow, crawling chill up his spine. The pastor turned away from the grave and left. He had a sermon to prepare. The church was quiet that afternoon. The pastor sat alone in the confessional, hands folded neatly in his lap. The booth was dimly lit, the wooden lattice between the two compartments casting a familiar pattern of light and shadow. It had been years since anyone had requested a confession in person. Most people were content to sit in the pews, whispering their regrets to themselves. But today was different. One of the men from the funeral, another farmer, younger, broad-shouldered, face lined with hard years, approached after the burial. His hands had fidgeted, his gaze never quite meeting the pastor's. "You have time to hear a confession?" The pastor had smiled. Of course. Now, seated in the booth, he listened as the man shifted uneasily on the other side. The wood creaked. A breath hitched. The pastor waited. A pause. Then, "I've been unfaithful to my wife." The words struck like a match in the dark, but the man had not spoken yet. The pastor's body went still. His hands, folded neatly in his lap, tightened slightly. The man let out a slow, shaking breath. And then, just as the pastor knew he would, he repeated the words he had heard aloud. The pastor felt a strange, almost hollow sensation bloom in his chest. Had he imagined it? No. It had been exact. The same words, the same tone, the same weight of shame pressing against them. The pastor inhaled slowly, carefully. His pulse had quickened, but his voice was steady. "Repentance is the first step toward forgiveness, my son." The man exhaled, relieved. They prayed together. The confession ended. The pastor watched the man leave, disappearing into the cold afternoon light. Alone once more, the pastor leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together, fingertips pressing against his lips. His heartbeat was still quick. It had to be a coincidence, didn't it? The pastor let out a slow breath, gaze falling to the dim glow of the candle burning on the altar. "This is a gift," he told himself silently. "A blessing." Outside, the wind picked up again. That Sunday, as the pastor began his sermon, he heard every single thought in the church. It was a slow, creeping realization. He had opened his Bible, drawn in a deep breath, and spoken the first few words when... I hope this doesn't run long. I should have eaten before coming. Did I leave the stove on? I can't take this anymore. I want a divorce. Does he actually believe this stuff? The voices stacked on top of each other, layer upon layer, too loud to be whispers, but too quiet to be speech. The pastor paused and looked at his parishioners. No one was moving their lips. He gripped the pulpit tighter. Something strange was happening. His gift was beginning to feel like a curse. Willing his voice to remain steady, he tried to push through it, tried to finish the sermon, but the voices swarmed into his head. Maybe if I scratch just a little, no one will notice. I hate my job. I hate my life. I wish I could just disappear. Why is he sweating? The pastor's throat narrowed. The words blurred on the page. His vision swayed, like the walls were tilting inward. He closed the book. With a shaky voice, he uttered, "Let us prepare for communion." The line moved slowly. One by one, they approached. The first was a teenage boy, hands shoved deep in his pockets, hair still damp from the morning shower. I wonder if Pastor knows how much weed I smoked before coming in, the boy thought to himself. The pastor's fingers twitched as he placed the wafer on the boy's tongue. The next, an old woman, face lined with deep wrinkles, her eyes sharp beneath her sun hat. I should call the police about my neighbor. I swear he has bodies buried in his yard, she thought as she piously opened her mouth to receive her wafer. Then a father, kneeling reverently, son at his side. I don't even know if this is my kid. The pastor's breath caught. The line creeped forward again. A kind-faced woman, hands folded, smiling warmly. Does he know this is all a lie? The pastor's ears buzzed. The next. I hate my wife. I hate my wife. I hate my wife. The next. God isn't listening. The next. The pastor has big hands. I wonder if... The pastor's world tilted sideways. His ears hummed violently, drowning out the organ, the rustling of clothes, the shifting of feet. He staggered. A hand caught his arm. Someone murmured his name, concerned. But beneath their voices, beneath the worried whispers, he could hear what they really thought. He's sick. He's losing it. Is this a test? The pastor took a breath, sharp, unsteady. He had to get out. He bolted out of the church and ran to his car. All he wanted was some silence, but the drive home was worse. The stoplight turned red, and the cars lined up beside him. The silence lasted a second. Then, it flooded in. I should just floor it. If I get hit, at least I won't have to go to work tomorrow. Do they know I stole the money? I don't think they know. God, I hope they don't know. Does this rash mean I have something? The pastor's fingers gripped the steering wheel. The light turned green. He sped through the streets until he made it home. He slammed the door behind him, the echo swallowed by the stillness of the room. The apartment was small, simple, a place meant for peace, for self-reflection. But within moments of stepping into what should have been his sanctuary, I wish I had died first, an elderly widow thought to herself in the unit next door as she knitted by her window. The mailman locking his truck down by the curb. What if I just left? Just kept driving, never looked back. The pastor clenched his jaw, squeezing his eyes shut, pressing his palms against his temples. He could hear everything anyone was thinking within a 200-meter radius around him. Silence. He just wanted silence. He needed it. But everyone was so loud. Thought came to him. What if he just slept? Surely the voices couldn't reach his dreams. He laid himself down in bed and tried to sleep. He really did. But the voices were too loud. He held the pillow over his head, stuffed his ears with paper towels, but as the sun came up, the voices were still there, loud and clear, ringing around his head. After a few days of this unending madness, the pastor was completely sleep-deprived. He was terrified to leave his apartment, but he was desperate for some sleep. So, he decided to venture out of his apartment to go to the store and buy some sleeping pills. The sky was overcast, the wind still carrying the weight of the storm that had passed. People were out, running errands, chatting on porches. Everything looked normal, but now, he knew things about those people he shouldn't know. A young mother who was a regular at church on Sundays rocked her baby outside the corner store. She spotted the pastor walking across the street and smiled as she waved to him. All the while, through her smile, he could hear her say,
"I hate this life. I hate this town. I hate this child."
The butcher in the corner store grinned as he wrapped a cut of meat.
If they knew where this really came from,
he thought smugly. They all looked normal. They smiled, they waved, but the pastor could hear them. He could hear their lies, their sins, their shame, their filth. It made his stomach turn. He finally made it inside the store, gripping the wooden basket like a lifeline. He wandered through the aisles trying to find the sleeping pills. His fingers twitched against the basket handle. Too many voices were being hurled at him. He could barely see straight. He knew who was cheating, who was stealing, who was hiding, and they smiled at him. The pastor dropped his basket and ran back home to pray. Bright and early the next Sunday morning, the church was full. The pews stretched long, packed with familiar faces, smiling, greeting one another, shaking hands, laughing softly at small jokes. They had no idea that the pastor heard all the things they didn't dare speak aloud.
"I should have kissed him when I had the chance. I buried the cash under the shed. If anyone finds it, I think I love her. I think I hate him."
The words pushed into the pastor's skull like a sickness as he stepped up to the pulpit. He had done his best to look presentable, but he could not hide the sunken, dark circles underneath his red eyes. The room flooded with silent murmurs about his disheveled appearance. Crawling, shifting voices pulled at the edges of his mind. The pastor gripped the podium. His breath was shallow. His sermon was prepared. The words were in front of him. He could do this. All he had to do was read. That's all. Just read the words aloud. As he struggled to focus on the writing in his book, a thought that was his own struck him. A thought that felt like a calling. Was it possible the reason he was given this gift was to call out the sinners, to keep them from going astray? The pastor finally looked up. His gaze landed on a mother, a wife, a woman who had brought casseroles to every funeral, who had sung in the choir for years, who had always been a beacon of warmth to their church community. And before he could stop himself, his mouth opened.
"Sarah,"
he said softly. Her head lifted. He watched her pulse quicken in her throat.
"Do you still dream about leaving your husband and children?"
People turned in their seats. A few heads snapped toward Sarah, wide-eyed, confused, uncertain. Sarah's face drained of color. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. A slow, sharp inhale cut through the room. Then, the pastor turned his head towards a man sitting in the back.
"David,"
he said. The man in the back sat up straighter.
"The money you stole from your boss, does it make you feel rich?"
As gasps rippled through the congregation, Sarah quickly excused herself from her stunned husband, who looked like he had been sucker punched, and stepped outside. Aside from having fervent thoughts about abandoning her family, Sarah had another secret. A big one. She was a high-ranking officer for the Foundation. Within moments of stepping outside, she pulled out her secure phone and made the call.
"Major anomaly confirmed. Immediate containment required."
In the brief amount of time it took for the Foundation to arrive, the pastor managed to wreak havoc inside the church walls. One by one, he feverishly called out all of the unspoken sins of his parishioners. He felt he was doing God's work until someone's thought hit him like a giant sack of potatoes.
"He's possessed."
Then another.
"The devil must be speaking to him. How else could he know this about me?"
The whispers grew louder, but they weren't in his head. Not anymore. Now, they were real. His entire congregation was yelling at him, out loud, with shock and disgust. They were afraid of the glassy-eyed madman who knew things he shouldn't know. The pastor clutched the pulpit as all the real voices shoved into his skull, along with everyone's unspoken thoughts. Everything screamed at him, multiplying, folding, collapsing into one deafening roar. He staggered. His vision swam. His wild, bloodshot eyes landed on the wooden cross hanging on the wall.
"God help me,"
he muttered out loud to himself as he grabbed the cross. He looked down at it and started laughing. It was a ragged, half-broken thing. And then, without warning, the pastor jammed the tip of the cross into his own ear. Parishioners watched in shocked silence as blood dripped down their pastor's neck. Gasps turned to screams. A woman fainted. A man dragged his wife toward the exit, their feet shuffling past the pews. The church door creaked open. They left, and another family left, and another, until the church was empty. The pastor stood alone, bleeding. Outside, the church parking lot became flooded with ambulances and police cars, except it wasn't paramedics and police officers that came out of those cars. They were Foundation agents. Inside, the pastor sat slumped in a pew, his fingers stained red, his mind rattling inside his skull like a caged bird. He barely noticed the figures approaching. A woman in a dark uniform knelt before him with a face that gave away nothing.
Sir, we need to take you to the hospital.
He blinked at her. She was lying. He heard it, clear as day. The pastor's lips parted. With a voice that was raw, barely above a whisper, he asked,
"What's the Foundation? And why will it be thrilled with me?"
For a moment, the agent didn't move. Then, without missing a beat, she lifted her hand and signaled to the others. The response was immediate. 2 men in identical uniforms closed in, their movements quick, practiced, not the kind of men who hesitated. The pastor didn't resist as they lifted him onto the gurney, not because he couldn't, but because he could already hear them.
"Strap him down. Keep his head still. Don't let him speak too much. We don't know how advanced he is yet."
The restraints tightened around his wrists and ankles. The doors of the church groaned open behind them. Outside, the congregation had gathered, huddled in clusters, eyes wide, whispers stirring through the crowd. They parted as the agents wheeled the pastor forward, clearing a path. Their faces were lined with a mixture of concern, confusion, and fear. The pastor looked up at them, and he heard them.
"Is he sick? Was it a breakdown? Maybe he really could hear us. Maybe we should pray for him? Thank God he's leaving."
He wanted to tell them, wanted to say something, but the gurney lifted. The wheels rattled off of the pavement, and then he was inside the ambulance. The doors slammed shut. The locks clicked. There was a sharp prick at his arm, and as the world faded to black, the last thing he heard was,
"You won't be our problem much longer."
Ever wished you could hear what people really think about you? No? Well, that's unfortunate, because SCP-405 is a contagious, brain-melting nightmare that forces telepathic abilities onto its victims. By the way, this insidious, mind-melting anomaly is of unknown origin, which is scientific shorthand for, we have no idea where the heck this came from, but it keeps ruining our day. And that pastor wasn't the first outbreak, and it wouldn't be the last. When the pastor was rolled into the Foundation facility, he was already far past saving. The moment the agents laid him on the examination table, they quickly saw his brain was humming like an overclocked radio, tuned into a station that never went quiet. But the Foundation had a protocol. Treatment Protocol 405 Alpha. It sounds fancy, but it isn't. Step 1. Pump the infected with a double dose of amnestics. Step 2. Put them into an induced coma for 3 days. Step 3. Hope for the best. The problem: this protocol only works in the early stages of infection, and the pastor was not in the early stages. But the agents, the doctors, the researchers didn't know that. They still thought they had a fighting chance. They didn't. Once the pastor released his final death scream, he infected everyone within a 200-meter radius, forcing the facility into a full lockdown. If someone catches SCP-405, the Foundation has one golden rule: stay far, far away. Victims are shuffled off to highly classified isolation zones in the middle of nowhere, presumably so they can spend their remaining days listening to the wind insult their life choices. Field teams encountering SCP-405 get one of 2 orders: dump them in a containment area, or, if they're in the late stages, terminate immediately and hope nobody within 200 meters got infected. If they did, congratulations, it's time for Treatment Protocol 405 Alpha. SCP-405 progresses with all the grace of a sledgehammer to the skull. For the first 2 days, nothing happens. You're fine. For now. By day 7, you start hearing thoughts, but only the worst ones about yourself. Soon, You're picking up every conscious thought within range. No filters, no pauses, no escape. By day 10, the range expands to 200 meters, turning every crowd into a psychic horror show. Sleep deprivation kicks in, and some victims start involuntarily broadcasting their own thoughts. Awkward if you have secrets. By week 2, your brain gives up on boundaries, and now you can hear unconscious thoughts, blinking, digestion, the whole nightmare. Dementia sets in. If restrained, most victims beg for death, while others try and fail to rupture their own eardrums just to make it stop. By day 28, your mind melts down completely. Seizures, comas, and the infamous death screams begin, your final mental broadcast before dying, which conveniently infects everyone within 200 meters, because if you suffered, why shouldn't everyone else? Then there's SCP-405-1, the lucky few who somehow survived the infection and now live out their days in a barren research facility in the desert, receiving the absolute minimum human interaction. Only 2 doctors are allowed to see them, and even they have to be doped up on tranquilizers before entering, because nothing says we care like medicating your staff just so they can tolerate a conversation. At some point, the Foundation thought it would be fun to stick all the SCP-405-1 survivors together in the same place, because what could go wrong with cramming a bunch of broken telepaths into the same building? Surprise, their personalities started merging. One picked up musical talent he never had. Another started instinctively field-stripping weapons despite having no military background. The conclusion? If you find another survivor, for the love of all things holy and unholy, do not send them here. SCP-405 appears out of nowhere, like that one bad idea you had at 2 a.m. It has no known origin, and its outbreaks have been happening for hundreds of years. Most outbreaks happen in schools, proving once and for all that high school really is the worst place on Earth. Only 2 cases have been recorded outside the US, one in Canada and one in Wales, which means either the rest of the world is better at handling pandemics, or the Foundation is really bad at covering up psychic mass casualties. SCP-405 is proof that mind reading isn't a superpower. It's a slow, screaming descent into madness. If you hear a voice in your head that isn't yours, run. If you suddenly know exactly what someone thinks of you, run faster. And if someone dies in your general vicinity and your ears start ringing, congratulations, you're next.
A pair of urban explorers are standing in front of a rather creepy-looking public school building. One explains to the other that it has been abandoned for years, though no one in the town seems to know exactly why. The 2 pull a board off one of the windows and climb through. The inside looks pretty much like they were expecting. Their flashlights reveal that years of squatters, teens partying, and wild animals have left plenty of refuse and debris lying around. There are 2 wings branching off the central portion of the building. They pick one of them to explore and start walking down the hall. As they make their way down past the graffiti-tagged walls, they stop to investigate one of the classrooms. It looks to be in the same bad state as the rest of the building, but incredibly, they're still writing on the chalkboard, as if the teacher stopped in the middle of a lesson and walked out. There's even a shriveled old apple still on the desk. As they exit the classroom back into the hallway, one of them stops. Wasn't the graffiti on the wall different before? Impossible. They must be mistaken. They keep walking and come to a stairwell. Time to explore the upper floors. They head up the stairs to the 2nd floor and poke their head out. Everything looks to be about the same as on the 1st floor. They go back into the stairwell and start heading up again. It feels like they've been walking up the stairs for a long time, though. They should be all the way at the roof by now. They finally reach a door. It must lead to a taller part of the building they couldn't see from the ground outside. They open the door and see the 2nd floor again. How could this be? The 2 look at each other. They've explored a lot of strange abandoned places, but nothing has creeped them out like this before. They head back down the stairs, and after only a few steps, they are back on the 1st floor. Something is really wrong with this place. Maybe it's best if they leave. They start walking back towards the entrance, but one grabs the other and points into a classroom. Isn't this the room they went in before? It has to be. The same apple is on the desk, but the complicated physics lesson has been erased. Now the chalkboard has just a simple phrase written on it. The children used to sing. The 2 scream and run out of the classroom. But which way is the entrance? The hall appears to stretch on in either direction before turning at 90-degree angles. This isn't right. The entrance was definitely visible from outside the classroom before. They pick a direction and start to run. The hallways seem to go on and on, turning in ways that should double back on themselves, but they still can't find the entrance. They try going back up through a stairwell, but just like before, there appears to be either too many or not enough stairs between the floors. The explorers keep running, checking rooms for a way out. Somehow they keep finding that same room with the rotten apple on the desk. They're panicking now. Every time they look away, the graffiti on the wall changes, or a new classroom door appears in the hall. They keep running, though, turning corner after corner after corner until... there it is, the entrance. But it's then that one of the explorers realizes he is all alone. He must have outran his friend. He looks at the entrance. It's so close. He starts to step towards it, but no. He can't leave his friend. He'll find him. He turns around and right in front of him is the same classroom again. The one with the apple. Only this time, his friend is in there, sitting in a desk in the middle of the room, asleep. Gathering the last of his courage, he runs into the room and tries to wake his friend, but he won't come out of his deep sleep. He pulls him out of the desk. If he won't walk out, he'll drag him out. He pulls him out of the classroom and down the hall towards the entrance. They're almost home free. He's just feet away from the door. He reaches out with his free hand and grabs the handle. Locked. He starts banging on the door, terrified that they'll be trapped in this place forever. When suddenly, the doors swing open. Two stern-looking men in suits are standing in front of him. "You aren't supposed to be here," one of the men says, as the other picks up his friend, throws him over his shoulder, and escorts the both of them out of the school. What these urban explorers didn't know is that they had just unintentionally entered a mysterious anomaly that the SCP Foundation has designated SCP-026, a strange location that has been given the nickname After School Retention. SCP-026 is a 3-story building that used to be a public school prior to it being shut down and condemned after both staff and students reported various anomalous properties in the building. They described hallways that seemed to change in length, classrooms disappearing and reappearing, and stairways with different numbers of steps leading up and down. The discrepancies between the building's blueprints and the reported interior were strange enough, but the former school truly came onto the Foundation's radar after the disappearances of multiple people in the area were linked to the location. It was initially believed, after sending in robots equipped with video equipment to explore the school, that the spatial anomalies were actually caused by an anomalous mental effect the space was having on people's perception, and that the physical layout of the school was not actually changing. However, additional exploration has proven that this is not the case. The physical space of the school does in fact seem to change, and even the exploration robots are affected by this shifting geometry. The inside of the school is covered in a substantial amount of graffiti, and most of it is the type you'd expect to see in any abandoned space. Gang signs, names, and street art, for example. But it appears to fade in and out and will change location. The writing on the chalkboards in the classroom appears to do the same, and just like the graffiti, much of what is written on the chalkboards is what you would expect to find in a school. Most of the writing relates to basic subjects like math, literature, and biology. However, some of the subjects that have appeared are highly advanced and out of place in a non-university setting, such as the notes on quantum entanglement that were found on a chalkboard. Bizarrely, the phrase, "the children used to sing," has been found multiple times in a variety of places around the building, though researchers are still left without an answer as to what it means or what significance it holds. But the anomalous nature of the writing inside of SCP-026 doesn't stop there. The written content of books, notepads, and other pieces of paper brought into the school have been observed to disappear, leaving blank pages behind, only for the writing to reappear as graffiti or on the chalkboards. It is unknown why or how this is happening, but those working within SCP-026 are advised to be careful of what written materials they bring inside. Multiple unconscious persons have also been found in the building. Several of the people found in the school have been identified as either former students or faculty of the school, including teachers and janitors, all of whom had been reported missing in the years following the school's closure. Despite some of them disappearing as long as 10 years after the school closed, when they are found inside SCP-026, they appear much younger than they should be, with the majority being high school aged and dressed in the style of the school's dress code in the time before it was shut down. It is currently not known how they ended up inside of SCP-026 or why they present as being a younger version of themselves. Attempts to wake unconscious people while still inside the school are always unsuccessful. However, once they are transported outside of SCP-026, they will immediately awaken. All have displayed signs of confusion in their brief moments of consciousness, before quickly dying from what appears to be severe dehydration. Their bodies will then experience rapid advanced decomposition. No useful information on the nature of SCP-026 has been gleaned from any of these subjects in the brief period after removing them from the school that they are conscious and alive. There have also been several cases of D-Class personnel who had participated in SCP-026 research disappearing from Foundation control, only to be found within the school at a later date. All are found sleeping and experience the same fate as the others who mysteriously appear within the school. The same inability to wake up while inside the school appears to also apply to those who enter SCP-026 and fall asleep, though they do not suffer the same gruesome fate upon being removed from the site and waking. Such was the case for a Foundation agent who, during a routine security check of the site, was found sleeping in the entranceway of the school by his partner. They were unable to wake the agent up, and he was moved outside the building. As soon as he was outside of SCP-026, the agent regained consciousness and appeared to be in a state of extreme agitation. In later interviews, he reported that he had dreamed he was in a strange classroom, and the same dream has been reported by all subjects who have fallen asleep in the school, as well as by the D-Class personnel who were later found inside. They all describe that in the dream, they are sitting inside of a classroom that closely resembles those found in SCP-026, though in the dream it is in a condition that matches how it likely appeared while it was still a functioning school. The bell rings, but no one moves, and raising their hand does not get the teacher's attention. Everyone is just sitting silently. If they try to leave the classroom, they find the doors locked. They then notice what is really off about the dream. Everything is in black and white, except for the dreamer, who looks down at their own hands and realizes that they are in color. Just as they begin to realize that they are dreaming, and that they are the one who is out of place, they wake up. This dream will persist, recurring over and over, and each time it takes the dreamer longer and longer to realize that they are dreaming. They also notice each time that their hands are a little more gray. Research into SCP-026 is ongoing, and all potential entrances, including both doors and windows, are to remain locked and boarded up in between investigative missions. Alarms have been placed around the location to alert Foundation personnel in the event that civilians or any other unauthorized personnel gain entry to the site. Due to the fact that even with these precautions, people continue to be found within SCP-026, and there has not yet been a reliable way discovered to prevent it, this anomaly has been classified as Euclid. While you do not appear to be at risk of any serious danger if you have not previously fallen asleep in SCP-026, pay attention to your dreams. And if at any time you find yourself back in a classroom setting where things seem, well, off, contact the nearest SCP Foundation personnel to receive Class A amnestics in order to minimize any risk of you experiencing an after-school retention.
It's not every day that the SCP Foundation opens a brand new site and appoints a new site director, but today is one of those days. Work is about to begin at Site 41, and a respected senior researcher has been appointed director of the brand new site. He hasn't been told much about it yet, but he knows a few things for certain. Some sort of new, highly volatile anomaly was discovered, a site was constructed around it, and his many years of loyalty to the organization have finally been rewarded with a promotion. As he takes his morning shower, his mind races, turning over the possibilities that this new chapter might bring. Is he up to the potential challenges? Just how dangerous is this new anomaly? What could possibly necessitate the building of a brand new site just to contain it? Whatever it is, these years of securing, containing, and protecting have prepared him. He's seen bizarre creatures, cursed places, and objects that defy the laws of physics. Whatever awaits him in his new position, he can handle it. He rinses the shampoo from his hair, letting his jitters flow down the drain with it, and switches off the water. He climbs out of the shower and turns to the foggy mirror. He sweeps a palm across the glass and meets his reflection's eyes. His serious expression catches him off guard, and he can't help but let his mind wander back to someone else who looked at him that way, with those stony gray eyes, such a long time ago. He and his brother had never gotten along. Though they shared the same face, the same hair, and the same eyes, they couldn't have been more different. He was the screw-up, the one who couldn't focus in class and was always bumbling through life like a bull in a china shop. His brother was the golden boy, the star student who could do no wrong. As the boys got older, he tried to climb out of his brother's shadow and tried to live up to their parents' expectations, but anything he did, his brother could do better. He got into a great college, his brother got into Harvard. He got a job, his brother got a more impressive one. He got a Honda, his brother got a Mercedes. He fell in love with a girl, and his brother married her. It seemed like he would never stand on his own, never be anything but the lesser version of a perfect man, a nasty little homunculus who just happened to be wearing the graven image of something greater than himself. On the night of his brother's wedding, the festering resentment had finally come to the surface. He remembers the night in bits and pieces, a harsh word, a fifth drink, a broken champagne glass. His brother said something that went too far, cut too deep. Without thinking, he shoved him just a bit too hard. He watched his brother fall, watched his head hit the corner of the table, and then he was still. Silent. He thought about turning himself in, but then another thought crossed his mind. Why ruin two futures at once? His brother was gone. There was no coming back from that. Should he really spend the rest of his life in prison over a tragic mistake? It didn't seem fair. Instead, he planned. For once, he was grateful for the similarities between him and his brother, their handwriting, for instance. He forged a note to his brother's new bride, telling her that he couldn't take the pressures of his life anymore. He was leaving, fleeing to Europe to start a new life, with a new name, and leaving all of his old ties behind. Then he packed his brother's body, the one that looked so much like his own, into a suitcase. He drove out into the woods, to a place they had once gotten lost as children, and he buried it so deep no one would ever find it. He'd never forget how he felt that night, laboring away in the dark forest, face an unpleasant mess of snot and tears, the end of his shovel piercing the dirt again and again, until he'd made a big enough hole to consign the case that now held his own brother's mangled body. Every shovelful of dirt that he piled back on, hiding his sin, felt heavier than the last. What had he done? What the hell had he done? But by the time the grim deed was concluded, rationalizations had smoothed out the hard edges of his crime. There were a million reasons this was okay. This was justified. It was an accident, of course, that much was clear. But didn't his brother also have it coming, for flaunting his perfect life in his face for all these years? And who was the worthless chunk of dead meat now? The scales were balanced once more. No one would ever know what he did. No one but him, in those moments where he could see his brother in the mirror, reminding him of his greatest shame, no matter how hard he tried to forget. But that moment is long gone. He's back in the present now, grounding himself with a splash of cold water on his face. He shakes off the memories and dresses for the day. It's time to get to work. When he arrives at the facility, he's shocked by what he sees. It's a castle, grand and imposing, even if the years have not been particularly kind to it. The Foundation did not build this structure, though they've set up shop inside now. His reminiscence has made him late, and he hasn't even had a chance to look over his paperwork yet. But when you're a site director, what does it even matter if you're a little late? You're the boss, the head honcho. The party doesn't start until you walk in. Just the thought of it is enough to make his chest swell with pride. He will have to ask someone to fill him in, an eager subordinate who won't mind going over the basics of the new facility and what they are here to study. Like clockwork, a young assistant researcher scurries up to him, holding a clipboard and practically vibrating with energy. She clearly hasn't been working here long. There's still light behind her eyes. He thinks to himself, "The things you see here will snuff that out soon enough, my dear." The assistant researcher leads him inside the castle, its guts ripped out and replaced with sleek, modern technology. A stone staircase has been swapped out for a row of elevators, marble busts exchanged for security cameras and monitors. They enter one of the elevators, and the assistant presses the button for the lowest possible floor. They are going deep into the bowels of the castle, into the belly of the great beast. With a ding, the doors open, and they step out. The air down here has a peculiar smell, musty and dull, with a sharp metallic tang of dried blood. Along the wall, he can see a row of prison cells, 8 of them to be precise, all shut tight. They're rusted and old. They've been here for quite some time. The Foundation didn't put these here. Of course, he realizes with a sinking feeling in his stomach that he can't quite explain, these cells themselves must be the anomaly he's here to supervise the containment of. He should have read the file before arriving, shouldn't have let himself get distracted. Then he would know what he's walking into. "So here we are," the assistant chirps, startling the man. He had almost forgotten she was standing next to him. "Shall I give you the grand tour?" She won't last long here with such a chipper attitude, he thinks. but he nods just the same. She walks ahead of him, referring dutifully to her clipboard as she goes. This is the first cell. As you can see, all of them are currently inactive. We'll be performing some tests later, though, and you'll hopefully get to see them in action. It's really something. She continues walking to the second cell. There are a lot of potential applications for this anomaly that, once we understand it, could be incredibly promising. He's only half listening as he trails behind her. As they near the third cell, the assistant glances back at him. I really look forward to working with you, sir. I've heard such great things. He opens his mouth to brush off the praise, to feign humility for her sake, when a sound startles him. The grind of metal against metal, the screech of a long disused door. The third cell is opening on its own. The assistant flips through her notes, growing pale. This isn't supposed to happen. This shouldn't be happening, she stammers, but he barely hears a word. He's staring, transfixed, at the darkness within. There's a rattling sound, like chains being dragged across a stone floor. What is about to be unleashed from this prison? He braces himself, remembering all of the near-death experiences he's faced down in the past. Nothing could prepare him for what finally appears. A pair of iron shackles, attached to lengths of chain, shoot out from the shadows, headed right for him. A shackle clamps suddenly around each of his wrists, the cold metal tight enough to cut off the circulation, digging into his skin. Then, an invisible force on the other end of the chains begins to pull. He fights it, the shackles cutting into him as the assistant screams for help, but his efforts are futile. Whatever wants to pull him closer, whatever is trying to lock him away, it's far stronger than he could ever be. The chains yank him inside the cell, and the door slides shut behind him with a crash. He thinks for just a moment that he can see his brother, laughing. Then, he's gone, leaving only an empty cell and a traumatized assistant behind. Sometimes the sins of the past come back to haunt you, and unfortunately for this particular man, there's no statute of limitations when it comes to SCP-567, or The Dungeon. In case the nickname wasn't clear enough, The Dungeon is not the sort of place you would ever want to be confined. SCP-567 is a series of 8 cells located beneath Foundation Site 41. Each cell has a designated number from SCP-567-1 through SCP-567-8. Most of the time, the cells are inactive and indistinguishable from any ordinary prison cell. However, when someone that one of the cells deems to be guilty of a specific offense enters their proximity, the anomalous properties of SCP-567 become abundantly clear. Each cell punishes a specific horrible act. SCP-567-1 targets those who have committed theft. 2 punishes sexual violence. 3 and 4 punish various types of murder. 5 punishes adultery. 6 and 7. I'm afraid I can't quite make out what it says. Someone appears to have deliberately scratched out the text in the file. As for SCP-567-8, whatever wrongdoing it chooses to penalize is still unknown, and it is never activated in the entire time the Foundation has known of it. Every other cell is completely empty, but 567-8 contains one single, antique wooden chair in the center of the room, nailed to the floor. The purpose of this chair is unclear. When an individual who has committed one of the aforementioned acts comes within 2.5 meters of their corresponding cell door, a pair of shackles will shoot out from within the cell, seemingly materializing out of nowhere. These shackles will then lock around the individual's wrists and drag them inside, at which point the cell door will slide itself closed and lock, and the prisoner and shackles will disappear. Multiple researchers have compared this anomaly, both in its function and its methodology, to SCP-1002, or Demisers, and SCP-2701, or True Solitary Confinement, which I have discussed at length before. Since the Foundation first contained SCP-567, only 2 prisoners have ever reappeared after being taken. 68 hours after he was first placed inside SCP-567-3, D903912 escaped and was found collapsed on the ground just outside Site-41. He died only moments after reappearing, before any medical intervention could take place. An autopsy showed severe injuries, including lacerations, internal bleeding, and burns on his wrists and ankles. The second subject to ever return was D937122, who was found 157 months after being locked in SCP-567-6. In spite of her injuries, which included head trauma, missing fingers, and the same burn marks on her wrists and ankles, this subject had a great deal more energy and attempted to attack the Foundation personnel that found her. She was subdued by several guards, restrained, and interrogated by an unnamed agent. Thankfully, an audio log of the interview was included in the file, giving us a sense of what transpired.
Please state your name. The agent began. D937122 did not respond. Please state your name. They repeated. Again, no response. The agent sighed heavily and changed tactics. Look, I'm very sorry and I want to help you, but we can't give you medical attention unless you cooperate with us, so please state your name for the record. At long last, the D-Class responded with an intense outburst. My name? You want to know my name? Screw my name! There is no name, there is no anything! But there is. I escaped. I got the medal off, none of it... And here the audio was corrupted to the point where I couldn't understand what was being said. After the interference clears, D937122 could be heard shouting, I should be free! Let me go! A struggle followed as she attempted to escape custody. The agent then replied, in an attempt to calm the D-Class down, I apologize, but now we have the opportunity to... Screw your opportunity! There is no opportunity! There's only escape! You called me a monster. Maybe I am one. But the nightmares, they... She briefly broke down into unintelligible mumbling before returning to normal speech. Compared to their crimes, I've done nothing wrong. Nothing at all. I haven't done anything wrong. Nothing. At this point, the D-Class became inconsolable, all coherent speech dissolving into sobs. The agent attempted to calm her down, but she remained hysterical. After several moments of sobbing, the D-Class began to gasp, as if she was having difficulty breathing. She clutched her chest and began to go into apparent cardiac arrest. The agent attempted to administer CPR, but it was unsuccessful, and after a few minutes, she was dead. An autopsy was ordered following the interview, which revealed the apparent cause of her death. Her body was covered with tiny punctures, and a toxicology report revealed an unknown poison in her bloodstream. Though only 2 people have ever emerged from SCP-567, they were not the only organic life forms to break out of the dungeon's cells. Every so often, the doors of a cell will open, and an entity will emerge. These creatures are given the designation SCP-567-9, and they are always aggressive. They do not usually match the description of any existing animal, instead appearing to be some sort of undiscovered creature. Once an instance of SCP-567-9 has escaped its cell, it will attempt to leave the dungeon and attack anything that gets in its way. The first instance of SCP-567-9 observed by the Foundation was a 4-limbed creature approximately 2 meters in length. It walked on all 4s, but had human-like hands on its front limbs, complete with opposable thumbs and sophisticated enough mobility to operate machinery. It was highly intelligent and used this intellect to take out 14 Foundation operatives before it was contained. The details of SCP-567-9-2 have been stricken from any official documentation. The only thing I can surmise from the file is that 9 personnel were killed after it appeared, and one of the agents that helped contain it requested and received psychological counseling for what they experienced during the process. So whatever it was he encountered, it wasn't anything good. During a round of routine testing with SCP-567-4, while the cell door was open, an instance of SCP-567-9 appeared, attacking and killing the researcher leading the tests. The entity was not contained, but after 7 casualties, was lured back towards its original cell. At this point, the cell deployed its shackles, and the creature was pulled back inside. The most recent instance of SCP-567-9 emerged when the door to SCP-567-7 opened and closed spontaneously. This was spotted on the CCTV footage, but none of the security monitoring the video could see anything leaving the cell. 2 weeks later, an agent assigned to the dungeon was found dead in his home, still in bed. The circumstances of his death were virtually identical to those attributed to SCP-966, a nightmarish species of creature known as the Sleep Killer, which I've discussed here on the channel before. When the escaped entity was found in Site-41, it was found to resemble an instance of SCP-966, with only a few variations. It was successfully contained, and the on-site security cameras were upgraded to prepare for future anomalies like it. Though many specifics are missing from the file, including the exact appearances of the creature that emerged from the cells, I have deduced one thing. Wherever SCP-567 is transporting those it deems guilty, it is a prison for monsters of all species. Humans are not the only ones it wishes to hold accountable for their crimes. As I was reading about the dungeon and the various tests involving it, a rather morbid question came to mind. What would happen to a test subject guilty of more than one crime? Which cell would claim them? Well, fortunately for my curiosity, and unfortunately for him, one D-Class found out. D834200 was used as a human test subject during initial studies of SCP-567. He was placed in front of SCP-567-6 and 7. Almost instantly, the cells rattled open, and the shackles shot out to grab him. His left wrist and ankle were ensnared by Cell 6, and his right were trapped by Cell 7. Then, he was pulled into both cells. Well, part of him was at least. How can I best explain his fate without causing too much distress? Have you ever held a wishbone in your hand at a family dinner while your sibling or cousin held the other side, and you both pulled until it broke? It was a bit like that. SCP Foundation Site-41 has been established in the abandoned castle that contains SCP-567 in order to prevent any civilians from coming across it. The entrance to the dungeon is kept sealed at all times, and the doors to each of the cells are monitored via CCTV. If any door is opened without authorization, Task Force Delta 9, also known as HAX, will be deployed to contain the resulting instance of SCP-567-9. If, for any reason, it cannot be contained, the task force is permitted to terminate. In order to prevent the unnecessary loss of any personnel, all applicants to join Task Force Delta 9 must have a clean criminal record, have never committed a crime at all, even at the behest of the Foundation, have a strong dedication to the law, and show loyalty to the social contract and the feelings of others. A robust moral compass is considered a vital qualification to work near SCP-567, lest they become simply one more victim added to its long list of tortured penitents. The Foundation has encountered many anomalies over the years that could pose a danger to the organization itself. SCP-567 is no exception. Untold numbers of Foundation operatives have committed terrible acts in the service of the greater good. They have lied, stolen, and even killed in order to protect and contain the secrets locked away in files and behind heavily guarded walls. A great deal of caution should be used when dealing with the dungeon, no matter how justified a person thinks their past sins might be. After all, there's no chance to plead your innocence, and the very prison that plans to hold you is also the judge, jury, and executioner. You can never win a fight in Minnie Mouse ears. The girlfriend learns that lesson the hard way in the car driving through Florida. No matter how articulate you are, how many one-liners your brain throws together on the spot, or even how right you are, if you are wearing Minnie Mouse ears, you just won't win the argument. "You said it was all booked!" she yells, throwing her arms in the air and sending drops of iced caramel latte all over the inside of the rental car. He snatches the drink out of her hand and plants it firmly in the cup holder. He yells back at her that it wasn't his fault. How was he supposed to know the payment was declined? "You didn't even check for a confirmation email?" She scowls and crosses her arms. Her boyfriend glances across at her and laughs. "I just can't take you seriously in those," her boyfriend says, pointing at the Minnie Mouse ears. She punches the button to wind the window down, rips the ears off of her head, and is about to throw the big black ears out the window. Only, she can't do it. Looking at the little bow, she feels her bottom lip start to tremble. She deflates, feeling the fight go out of her. "I'm sorry," she says. "I just really wanted to go to Disney World." "I know." The pair of them drive in silence for a moment. The fight wasn't really about Disney. None of their fights were ever about what was really wrong. They'd always pick stupid, superficial things and shout about those, but not say what was really going wrong deeper down. That said, not getting to go to Disney World isn't just a superficial thing to her. Growing up in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, she was very much used to having to explain to people where she was from. Sleepy Eye, yes, that's its real name. It's near New Ulm, near Mankato, about 2 hours from Minneapolis. If you don't know where Minneapolis is, she can't help you. Anyway, this trip was her first real adventure. She'd never left Minnesota much before. The flight down to Florida had been her first time on an airplane. All to come to the happiest place on Earth. Only they got to the front gates, and her boyfriend realized his payment had been declined. Did they have the money to buy 2 new tickets on the door? Of course not. They've blown it all on airfares, car rental, airport food, and a pair of Minnie Mouse ears. "I'm sure there are plenty of great things to do in Florida," her boyfriend says, trying to sound optimistic. "For free?" He doesn't reply. They just drive on in silence. Without a ticket to go to Disney World, they have no choice but to spend what little cash they have left on a motel for the night. It takes them about an hour to get there. The girlfriend gets straight out of the car and into their room, slamming the door behind her. Her boyfriend will just have to take a walk for a bit. There are cockroaches in the sink and some questionable stains on the bed, walls, and every flat surface in the room. There is apparently a pool out the back, but she's heard the stories of alligators roaming around this state and is in no mood to roll that dice in a place like this. She opens YouTube on her phone and puts on a horror video to listen to in the background. That calms her down. She loves that kind of thing. After 20 minutes, there's a soft knock at the door. Looking apologetic as anything,
Her boyfriend nudges his way into the room, holding a brochure in his hand. She snatches it off him without a word and reads it with as grumpy of an expression as possible. Spooky self-guided tours in Florida. Visit the infamously haunted Pensacola Lighthouse today to chill your bones in the Florida heat. Explore the scariest spot on the coast for free, with a special Disney twist. Okay, fine. Her boyfriend does know how to cheer her up, but she can't let him know that. He's still supposed to be in trouble. But the following night, as the pair of them approach the lighthouse in the pitch darkness, she can't help but crack a smile. With the light at the top turned off and the railing surrounding the building stabbing sharply into the air, the place certainly looks pretty haunted. The brochure tells them that the place is a maritime museum during the day, but is currently closed to the public for maintenance. However, there's a spare key to be found right under... Got it! Her boyfriend straightens up proudly and turns to hand her the key that he retrieved from under the flower pot. She scowls at him to make sure he still knows he's in trouble for not getting them into Disney, but she does secretly feel a little glimmer of affection. He's always been the first behind the couch during horror movies, so he's clearly trying his best to make it up to her. The creaking noise that she was really hoping for doesn't come when she opens the door. It opens smoothly. Her boyfriend flicks the light switch instinctively, and the inside of the museum immediately lights up, showing glass cabinets, old nautical equipment, and a few flags. She groans and switches the lights back off. It's not exactly a haunted tour if you just turn all the lights on, but the magic of the room is gone now. They've now seen everything, nothing lurking in the dark, no shadows, just a boring old museum. They trudge into the next room. There's so much streetlight spilling through the window that they can see practically everything in here as well. It's a recreation of the old lighthouse keeper's bedroom. A couple of old-looking beds, antique wardrobes, and clothes from the olden days. So much for a haunted lighthouse. This is so lame. The girlfriend groans and switches the light on. Even her boyfriend isn't looking scared by any of this. There's literally nothing to be scared of in here. Can we just go home? Her boyfriend looks apologetic again. He's really tried to salvage this vacation, but it just hasn't happened. She can't be too mad at him. You know what? No, she says. Let's at least finish looking around this museum, then we can go. We can just switch on the lights, read the exhibits, and see the view from on top of the lighthouse. So they do that. The pair of them go back into the first room and start reading through the signs under each of the displays. There's a diagram explaining all of the different knots that sailors used to tie. A long paragraph all about how the lighthouse used to burn oil but now runs on electricity generated by... The girlfriend yawns. Without the adrenaline of any ghosts, museums are much harder work in the middle of the night. It isn't even Disney-themed like the brochure promised. The only Disney thing in here is that Mickey Mouse mascot in the corner. It doesn't even fit with the rest of the museum, just a random costume on a mannequin. It must be almost 7 feet tall. Her boyfriend is staring at it real close. He leans in, examining the material up close under the bright museum lights. This thing's weird, he says. I wonder how old it is. Look, the white's all faded, and it's got this fur effect. Crunch! Mickey Mouse chomps into her boyfriend's arm with a ferocious set of teeth. Neither of them reacts at all, frozen by total disbelief, as Mickey stands there, his huge rat-like fangs embedded in the boyfriend's arm. He yanks it from the cartoon character's jaws, blood leaking from the wounds. How can this be happening? Mickey's eyes flick between the two of them. He raises a gloved hand and waves. The boyfriend shrieks, turns on his heels and runs, clattering into one of the exhibits as he goes. He crashes into her, and the wound on his arm hits her in the chest. She looks down, confused at the bloodstain on her shirt, then back at Mickey Mouse. He gives a little shooing motion with his hands. Run. Now it's her turn to scream. She grabs her boyfriend and bundles him out of the room. Mickey was standing right by the entrance. They're gonna have to hope there's another way out somewhere deeper in the museum. They run through room after room, every few steps turning to see Mickey following them. He isn't running at all. He's sauntering along, arms swinging cartoonishly around. Just like in Steamboat Willie, he's whistling a tune to himself as he goes. That must be the door out of here. The pair of them crash into it and go tumbling into the next room. There's blood everywhere. Her boyfriend is looking more and more pale by the second. They're not outside, though. They're in a small circular room with a spiral staircase running up, up, up into darkness. Mickey's whistling is getting louder. They don't have a choice here. The girlfriend jumps up and hauls her tiring boyfriend to his feet. Putting his unwounded arm over her shoulder, she half carries him up the stairs, feeling the metal spiral shudder under them with every step. Halfway up, she looks back over her shoulder. Mickey is standing in the doorway. He waves enthusiastically.
Her legs are burning by the time she reaches the top of the lighthouse. Barging open the door, she throws her boyfriend rather unceremoniously up onto the balcony around the big light. Panting, she turns back around to look back down into the darkness below them. Mickey is standing by a big switch on the wall. He laughs and flips the switch. A big clunking sound comes from the light next to her. Very slowly at first, it starts to spin. The light flickers on dimly at first, then gets brighter. Faster and faster it spins, brighter and brighter the beam until it's blinding. She raises an arm to shield herself from the piercing light. Against the dark of the night, her eyes can't adjust between light and dark fast enough. She's going blind up here. From below, she hears a heavy footstep on metal, then another. The whistling starts again as Mickey cheerfully makes his way up to them. She glances down at him. He waves happily up at her again. She almost waves back instinctively. No, now's not the time. She needs to come up with a plan. But her brain just can't do it. For all the horror movies she's watched, all the times where she's screaming at the TV telling the protagonist what to do, now that she's in one for herself, she's got nothing. But wait, maybe she does have something. A pair of gloved hands appear on the doorframe, gripping the wood tightly. A smiling Mickey Mouse pops his head around the door, blood all over his chin. He just stays there for a moment, eyes flitting between her and her boyfriend, bleeding out on the floor. He sticks a comically large shoe out from the doorway and steps out onto the gallery to join them. The light swings around and shines in his face. As soon as it hits him, he bares his teeth, thousands of them, and shrieks in their faces. That's it. The girlfriend runs at him, fast as she can. At the last moment, she jumps, bends her legs, and with all the force she can muster, 2-foot kicks him in the chest. The giant mascot is really solid. He's so heavy that all of her efforts only just about knocks him off balance. But it's enough. Tripping over his own giant shoes, Mickey falls backwards. His back hits the railing, and for a second, it looks like he's going to be okay. But his momentum is just too much. His feet fly up into the air as he tips back over it, tumbling down into the darkness and laughing all the way down. Crunch! Mickey lands, impaled on the spiked railings outside the lighthouse. One of the rails stabs straight through his head. His smile freezes in place. His laughter stops. Her boyfriend is not looking okay. He's barely conscious now, lying in a sickeningly large pool of blood. They need to get him to a hospital fast. Still not recovered from carrying him up the lighthouse stairs, she now has to haul him back down them. The pair leave a red trail all the way through the museum, but that's the last of her concerns at this point. Not looking across at Mickey lying dead on the railing, the girlfriend dumps her boyfriend into the passenger seat of the rental car and goes round to the driver's side. She doesn't have a license, but she did a few lessons this year. Should be fine, the roads will be empty. All she needs to do is get them to a hospital. Her boyfriend is groaning in the passenger seat. She starts fishing through his pockets for the keys. She glances up at the mirror. Mickey is still lying on the fence, motionless. The door to the museum is closed, just like how they left it. Or wait, did they leave it open? She tries the other pocket. Her boyfriend is trying to say something. She shushes him. He can tell her later, but he keeps trying. Raising his uninjured arm, he points at something on the dashboard. Her mouse ears. What's the big deal? They've already dealt with Mickey Mouse. No, wait. Not Mickey. Minnie. Bang! 2 large dents appear on the car's roof right above their heads. The girlfriend desperately turns back to her boyfriend, searching pocket after pocket for these keys. Why does he have so many damn pockets on these shorts? She glances out the window and stops dead still, peering through the glass at her, head upside down as she leans over from the roof. Minnie Mouse waves at her. The gloved hand stops moving and points at the third pocket down on the left. The girlfriend reaches into it and finds the keys. Minnie gives a big double thumbs up, tilts her head back, and slams it into the glass. Bang! Bang! Again and again, she pounds her forehead on the windshield. The glass sags and fractures into smaller and smaller pieces. The girlfriend doesn't have time to sit and wait, though. She stabs the keys into the car and starts the engine. Slamming the accelerator to the floor, the car shoots off into the night. Minnie gives her another double thumbs up, winds a hand back, and punches it through the window. The girlfriend screams. The hand grabs the top of her boyfriend's head and starts to slowly twist it around. No matter how much she swerves the car, the girlfriend can't knock the mouse off the roof. Round and round her boyfriend's head goes. Crunch! His vertebrae detached and grate against each other. His head is looking all the way backwards at his seat, but Minnie keeps turning it, round and round, until he's looking straight forwards again, neck crumpled and splitting, eyes lifeless.
Minnie puts a hand to her mouth and giggles. Oops! The road disappears from under the car, and it free falls for a second, the nose tipping forward. Crash! The nose lands first, tipping the car forwards and throwing the girlfriend through what remains of the windscreen. She tumbles across the sand, feeling her arms snapping underneath her as she goes. In a blur, she tries to get to her feet, but collapses. Rolling onto her back, she stares up at the stars as the sea laps against her cheek. A pair of giant round ears with a little pink bow block her view. Minnie peers down at her, spotting the girl's broken arm. With two giant gloved hands, she reaches down and takes the arm in her grip, breaking it back the other way and shoving it together until it resembles how it used to look. Minnie gives her the double thumbs up. The girlfriend doesn't even try to move. This is it. She's accepted her fate. But Minnie looks sad. Putting her hands under the girlfriend's armpits, she lifts her up and puts her back on her feet. She makes that same shooting motion Mickey did before. The girlfriend stumbles back a couple of paces, but falls over again. Exasperated, Minnie throws her hands in the air, picks the girlfriend up again, and puts her back on her feet. Minnie points at her. You. She then makes a little running motion with her fingers and points off up the beach. You run. Just kill me, the girlfriend says, exhaustion racking her every word. Minnie puts her head in her hands, even more exasperated than before. The mouse puts her hands together and makes a begging motion. Please? The girlfriend just stands there. Minnie throws her arms in the air, looks down at the girl, and shrieks, baring all her teeth. She stays put. Minnie pushes her over, jumps down into a straddling position, and punches the girlfriend in the head with her gloved hand. Pain fills the girl's head, shooting the fear back into her. With nothing left, the girl pushes herself free and stumbles away from Minnie. She hobbles up the beach, blood flowing freely down either side of her head. She's going as fast as she can, but it's barely faster than a walk. Behind her, Minnie is covering her eyes and counting on an outstretched hand, playing hide and seek. There's nowhere for her to go, though, nowhere to hide. They're just on an open beach, stretching out in front of her and behind her. Nowhere to go except... She splashes out into the sea, up to her knees, her waist, her chest. Now she's just fully swimming. Her broken arm screams at her from the motion. She barely has the strength to kick. Salt water splashes up into her ear holes and feels like it's washing straight into her brain. The world sounds strange and choked. The girl cranes her neck around to see Minnie standing on the shore. The mouse waves at her enthusiastically. The girl waves back. Minnie giggles. The two of them stay like that for almost an hour, the girl steadily dying in the sea, trying to stay afloat, Minnie waiting enthusiastically on the shore. With each wave, the girl is slowly brought closer and closer to the mouse, until she's lying helplessly at the creature's giant feet. The last thing she sees is a pair of giant, round ears. Turns out she had been wrong. You can absolutely win a fight with a pair of Minnie Mouse ears. Next time you're considering going on vacation in the state of Florida, it would be wise of you to avoid reading any brochures you may come across, just in case you come across SCP-3640, a seemingly harmless brochure. SCP-3640 can be found all across the state, though it is currently unknown how they come into being. These brochures will promote self-guided tours within the state, all of areas that have particular ghost stories, folklore, or rumors of hauntings attached to them. These tours are free and promise tourists an up-close and personal look at the haunted history of Florida. However, most are not prepared for just how up-close these tours end up being. If you read this brochure and decide to go along to the location advertised at the time it lists, you will be met with instances of SCP-3640-Alpha. In this case, these creatures manifested themselves as Mickey and Minnie Mouse. However, they can take the form of any uniformed mascots associated with the Walt Disney Media conglomerate. These mascots will hunt you down mercilessly, but with all the charm and squeaky clean joy we all know and love. Live ammunition does little to stop these SCPs when directed at the body, but a clean headshot has been proven to do the trick. It is fortunate then for our tourist couple that Mickey's head was impaled on the railing. What is less fortunate, however, is that they were there together. This is because SCP-3640 has a few interesting rules for how it operates. In order for SCP-3640-Alpha instances to engage in the hunt, every member of the party has to have read the brochure. If a group of 5 go to a haunted house at the designated time, but only 4 of them have read the brochure, They will enjoy a nice, spooky, but safe evening. If all members of the party have read the brochure, however, the same number of mascots will manifest and hunt them down. For a group of 20 college students, you can only imagine the colorful range of Disney characters that come out to play. These SCPs will also only remain within their state borders. If you find yourself being hunted down, you can either run for the border or find a good place to hide until the times allotted for your self-guided tour come to an end. It remains unclear how these SCPs grow, reproduce, or where they go outside of their hunting times, if they continue to exist at all. Who knows? There are a lot of back rooms in Disney World with all mascot costumes lying around. The Walt Disney Company is under continuous surveillance to ascertain any link between SCP-3640 and the brand themselves. To this day, a letter from the company to a local governor in 1979 is the only tie to have been found between them and the creatures. It reads, "Dear Governor Askew, the Walt Disney Company thanks you for your cooperation in this matter regarding the unlicensed Walt Disney character operators. Please pass along the following information collected by the outstanding men and women of the City of Orlando's Police Department to the Florida National Guard. If a character is spotted, call to get its attention and then rapidly flash your flashlights at the costume. If it does not flinch, fire on sight. Aim at the head if possible. Else, aim at the knees to disable them and then finish them off with headshots. Body shots have been known to lack effectiveness. Deceased characters are to be incinerated. No other means of disposal are advised. We are currently pursuing alternative legal means of shutting down these unlicensed operators and hope to achieve a settlement within the end of the year. Cordially yours, the Walt Disney Company."
Imagine a gaping maw that could swallow you whole. Not just you, but any creature of any size. Imagine a creature capable of constant transformation and evolution, taking any traits it needs from its prey. It is indestructible, intelligent, unstoppable, the perfect organism. And would you believe me if I told you it was downright adorable? A little boy wanders through a toy store, a small wad of money in hand, searching for the perfect thing to play with. Desperate to help quell some of his summer vacation boredom, his parents gave him a little cash and brought him to the store to pick out a new distraction. But what will he choose? A superhero action figure? A toy car? Some brightly colored plastic bricks to build with? None of it seems quite right. The truth is, he doesn't really want a toy, so much as he wants someone to play with. But his parents don't get the summer off like he does, and they don't have the time to entertain him in between the seemingly endless meetings and phone calls. He's just about to give up and tell his parents that there isn't anything he wants, when he suddenly spots a friendly, plush face peering out from between a few remote control trucks. He reaches out his hand to touch the soft fabric, only for the toy's face to meet his hand halfway. Toddles off of the shelf on short little legs, bumping its head against the boy's hand like a cat asking for pets. The boy grants the toy's request, patting it gently on the head, and it emits a high-pitched sound like a little meow, crawling closer and pressing itself against his leg affectionately. The boy beams, scarcely able to believe his luck. This isn't a toy at all. It's a new friend. There isn't a price tag on the soft creature or a barcode that a cashier could scan. Is he supposed to pay for it? Anxious about the possibility of doing something wrong, but even more afraid that he won't get to bring his new friend home after all, he places the money on the shelf where the creature came from, then scoops it into his arms. Delighted to be held, it falls into a peaceful sleep, and by the time the boy rejoins his parents at the front of the store, it looks to them as if he bought himself an ordinary plush toy. It isn't the most adventurous pick by any means, but they haven't seen him this happy in a while, so they don't ask any further questions. That is, until it starts to move of its own free will. Immediately, the boy's screaming mother starts chasing the impossible creature with a broom. It gives a desperate "Meep" and tries to avoid her onslaught, but its 4 little legs can only carry it so far. It needs some kind of boost to escape, and luckily, it finds one, in the form of a dead cockroach lying underneath the kitchen table. The plush creature's thin mouth expands, swallowing the dead cockroach whole. Immediately, 2 extra legs, giving it a total of 6, grow out of the creature's flank. 6 legs. Yes, that's more like it. It scuttles away at great speed, chasing its way up the wall as the boy's mother screams in horror. But that won't dissuade the father. He's taken up his double-barreled shotgun and unloads 2 slugs into the creature. The force knocks it off the wall, making it tumble to the ground. But despite taking the brute force of a powerful shotgun,
it somehow still lives. It skitters away at full speed as the father, loading 2 more slugs, gives chase. It escapes through the doggy door, the father and his screaming wife hot on its heels. Luckily for the creature, there's another boon just outside the house, a dead pigeon that had met its demise in an unfortunate collision with the living room window a few hours earlier. The creature doesn't waste any time. Its impossibly elastic mouth stretches open and swallows the pigeon whole, the decaying bird disappearing into the darkness. As soon as the creature's mouth closes, it starts to change again. Its extra legs disappear, and it begins to take on a more bird-like shape, with wings and tail feathers that help it take flight. The door swings open, and the creature swoops into the air. Not to be deterred or dishonored, the father levels his shotgun again and takes aim. Boom! The blast hits the now flying creature again, sending it spinning through the air with a high-pitched squeak. It doesn't understand why these people are being so mean to it, after it was allowed so warmly into their home not long ago. Despite being shot with a shotgun twice, it is still unharmed, just a little shocked. When it lands, it does so on the side of a wooded road to catch its breath. All that flying worked up a powerful hunger, and luckily for the creature, there's a nearly intact deer carcass laying on the grassy verge nearby. Not long before, it had been sent on an express trip to the afterlife by the grille of an SUV. Waste not, want not, the creature thinks. The creature's mouth expands and devours the deer, despite the deer being several times its own size. Once the less than fortunate fawn has been consumed, the creature sprouts 4 long, majestic legs and a little cotton tail, before galloping off into the woods. No, don't worry, you haven't completely lost your mind. You've just witnessed SCP-4966 in the wild. And if that story was a little too much for you, I regret to inform you that this case file gets far, far stranger from there. SCP-4966 is a quadrupedal stuffed animal constructed from gray fabric. It also just so happens to be alive. Any attempts to pierce this fabric and examine the creature's contents have failed. It appears to be essentially indestructible. After dissection failed, the Foundation attempted to examine the internal structures of SCP-4966's body using X-rays, but it seemed to show a complete lack of skeleton or musculature, or anything else that would allow the creature to move as it does. Aside from 2 black eyes and a woven mouth, SCP-4966 has no visible markings or orifices on its body. Its vocalizations resemble that of a kitten, and its disposition is highly social. If it does not receive socialization on a regular basis, the creature will become anxious and withdrawn. Just as cats are known for mirroring the behavior of the fellow felines and human owners, SCP-4966 will imitate the actions of other entities it spends time with. It does not appear to need food, water, or air, but will eat, drink, and breathe if in the presence of an entity doing the same. There is, however, one scenario in which SCP-4966 will eat regardless of the behavior of other entities in the area. When the creature is presented with the corpse of an organism, it will extend its mouth to an anomalous degree and consume the body whole. The creature's body will bulge and stretch around its meal, but the density of its plush skin remains the same throughout the process. There appears to be no size limit on the corpses it can consume, as the creature was once witnessed consuming an adult blue whale's body during one particularly ambitious test. Once SCP-4966 has completely enveloped a given corpse, its body will slowly return to its original size. During this transition phase, the creature will display changes to its morphology, consistent with the characteristics of its most recent meal. These alterations vary widely, but the existing facial features and gray coloration will always remain unchanged. This process goes on for approximately 4 hours, at which point the creature will regurgitate some manner of biological waste composed of various elements of the original organism. If this process is hard for you to wrap your head around, I can relate. Perplexed by this entity's physiology and the manner in which it feeds, I attempted to uncover the experiment log for SCP-4966. I was unable to access it in its entirety, but did get my hands on several excerpts that I found quite illuminating. They answered absolutely none of my initial questions, but were thoroughly entertaining to read just the same. I won't keep you in suspense. Allow me to elaborate. In one experiment, a deceased adult male timber rattlesnake was placed in front of SCP-4966. The creature quickly devoured it and began to change. Its torso extended 150 centimeters longer than it previously had, and its abdomen terminated in a visibly developed tail and rattle. After lengthening in this way, the creature used its new shape to snake around the limbs and bodies of attending researchers. It did not wrap tightly enough to restrict blood flow, but instead appeared to be interested in providing the researchers with hugs. The rattle was shaking at a near constant rate throughout this process, not as a warning of impending peril, but more in the manner that a dog might wag its tail when excited. When 4 hours had passed, SCP-4966 proceeded to regurgitate a mass of decomposing keratin and liquefied organic matter. During another test, SCP-4966 was fed an adult female lionfish at an advanced stage of decomposition. In spite of the fish's venomous spines, SCP-4966 suffered no adverse effects when consuming it. After swallowing its unappetizing meal, SCP-4966 developed a pair of pectoral fins, a rear fin, and a large dorsal fin that was constructed of several long spines. SCP-4966 struggled to move with these fins, primarily flopping along the ground like a fish out of water. A chemical analysis of the spines matched the composition of lionfish venom, and the researchers avoided touching the creature for the remainder of the test. When it was time to regurgitate, SCP-4966 spat up some broken spines and liquefied organic matter. With reptiles and fish taken care of, the research team decided to get a little bit wild and introduced SCP-4966 to some plant matter. Frankly, I'm glad to see it getting a well-balanced diet and eating some greens for once. Well, browns, really. It was presented with a pile of deceased sycamore maple leaves. SCP-4966 consumed one single leaf, then immediately regurgitated it. Not a fan of vegetables, I suppose. It spent the remainder of the test playing with the pile of leaves, climbing up onto its provided furniture, then diving into the leaves again and again, emitting high-pitched, gleeful vocalizations. During another test, a severely damaged female ostrich corpse was presented to SCP-4966. Still, the extent of the degradation did not seem to impact SCP-4966's anomalous ability. Because upon consumption, the creature's legs extended approximately 1.3 meters, developing 2 large toes, and its head extended approximately 1.2 meters upward, forming a large, curved neck. A pair of featherless wings sprouted from the sides of SCP-4966's torso. The creature attempted to fly using these wings, but much like the ostrich that had imbued it with them in the first place, it was sadly flightless. Upon regurgitating several shattered portions of bone and a large amount of liquefied organic matter, it reverted to its usual form. During another experiment, SCP-4966 was presented with the head of a male adult eastern moose, taxidermied and well preserved. SCP-4966 quickly consumed this taxidermy, no doubt missing from some tackily decorated hunting lodge, and began to transform. It developed large antlers, approximately 1.4 meters across. Due to the size of these antlers relative to SCP-496's head and the rest of its body, its sense of balance and mobility were severely hindered, causing it to wobble with every step. Additionally, it developed large ears that, due to a lack of structural support, could not remain upright, and instead flopped down around the creature's head. I only wish that the experiment log had included a photo because, to be perfectly frank, the resulting effect sounds utterly adorable. Less adorable is what SCP-4966 regurgitated after the test, a large, compact mass of metal, wood pulp, and shattered bone. Curious to see how close an item needed to be to an actual corpse to be effective, the researchers provided SCP-4966 with a pair of genuine leather boots. This was, I assume, an attempt to see if SCP-4966 would recognize these as part of a deceased cow or not. The answer, it would appear, is not. SCP-4966 approached the boots curiously, lightly biting the toe of the left boot as if tasting it. Then it moved on to the right boot, gently biting the toe, then giving up on eating them. SCP-4966 knocked over the right boot, climbed inside of it, and promptly fell asleep. Soft snoring could be heard from within for the next hour. At this point in my research, I was prompted to enter some additional security credentials. Luckily, through methods I don't feel especially comfortable disclosing here, I was able to obtain these very credentials and continued my investigation. What secrets could a sentient plush toy, albeit an anomalous omnivorous one, have that would require this level of secrecy? I know that curiosity killed the cat, but I was banking on the probability that satisfaction would bring it back, as well as the fact that I am rather notably lacking in feline attributes. So I proceeded. It seems that after exhausting all other species, the research staff decided to provide SCP-4966 with a human corpse, that of D-01763 to be exact. When SCP-4966 consumed this body, there were no apparent physical alterations to the creature at all. However, it did begin to vocalize, speaking for the first time in recognizable, although slightly incoherent English. Blessed with the ability to communicate clearly for the first time, the entity made several complaints about its enclosure, specifically the low-quality material of its bedding. But then, it revealed something fascinating. When it consumes a deceased human, SCP-4966 is able to access the memories of that person. It also apparently gains the ability to speak at the level of a young child. This capacity for speech is lost when the organic matter of the meal is regurgitated, but the memories remain. A compelling enough discovery on its own, but what happened next was truly shocking. Shortly after this foray into human experimentation with SCP-4966, the Chaos Insurgency staged a raid on Site-17, during which they attempted to gain access to several anomalies, including SCP-4966. This raid proved unsuccessful, but its occurrence, and the discovery of a Chaos Insurgency document containing classified Foundation information on SCP-4966, raised several concerning questions. How did the Insurgency gain this information? Why were they so interested in SCP-4966? And how did they know where it was contained? Several corpses of Insurgency members were provided to SCP-4966 in an attempt to uncover the answers. Once it regained the ability to speak, Dr. Randall Bannock conducted an interview with SCP-4966. For the first 2 hours and 14 minutes of the interview, SCP-4966 was not helpful in the slightest. It focused its attention on a relentless demand for snacks, or, as it calls them, munchies. After giving the creature 7 biscuits, Dr. Bannock was beginning to lose his grip and begged it to cooperate. It responded with yet another complaint.
I want a better bed, too. The one you guys have is lumpy. Make a bed out of munchies so I can eat it when I get hungry.
Dr. Bannock promised the creature another biscuit if it could explain how the Insurgency knew its location.
The red shooty people? They found the room with my name on it.
Dr. Bannock sighed, then reworded his question to ask how the group knew its item number.
I was in the room, so the room had my name. They made lots of banging on the door and noisy noises. I was sleeping, but it was too loud and the bed was lumpy.
Dr. Bannock promised the creature that a new bed would be delivered the following day, then continued his line of questioning. How did the Insurgency know where the building was? The creature refused to answer until it received an additional biscuit.
The Pat people who visit me. They tell the Wed people stuff through the head pots.
Understandably, Dr. Bannock required clarification on the identities of the, quote, Pat people.
Lots of people give me pets. The white coat woman who gives me the toys is nice. I like her. She gave me the ball with the bell in it, and it makes a ringy noise. The orange person that gives me lots of pats, but his face keeps being different between pat times. He gives me pats, though, so it's a good orange. You give me munchies and smell like a cake, and that's a good munchie. Also, you said you were going to get me a good bed, but...
Dr. Bannock interrupted the creature here, redirecting it to the topic at hand. After bribing SCP-4966 with 2 more biscuits, it continued to try and explain.
I think they use the head squishies, like the one in the red guy I munched, and the one in the spiky stripey, but that one wasn't too good.
This only served to add more confusion, and Dr. Bannock asked for clarification. Did the creature mean they used their brains?
I don't know about squishy parts. I think the big part that looks like a watermelon is used to talk. I'm not an organ psychic.
At this point, rather than do what I would do and ask what on earth an organ psychic is, Dr. Bannock pressed for details on the so-called orange person that SCP-4966 ate.
The orange person was colder and was kinda too mushy. The red people had lots more stuff about shooty guns, but I don't like to hurt people, so I say no thank you, mister. The orange person had a lot more about like being stuck in a room, and I don't think they ever got to taste the crispy crunch of a munchie, which is sad.
Dr. Bannock acknowledged the sadness of life without the joys of a crispy crunch, then continued his line of questioning about the brain-based communication between D-Class and Insurgency members.
1 second. I'm gonna do a real big think.
SCP-4966 sat in silence for several minutes, humming to itself in confusion.
I think I found something from the Wed people, but it's a bit scrambly and they use some big words I don't know. They keep saying words about sonic chips, but they aren't eating any chips and I'm confused. Wait, I think the orange people had the sonic chips already. Maybe they forgot them at the store because they were saying stuff about not noticing the sonic chips. I want that munchy sonic chips like the orange person gets.
Eventually, after a lot of prodding and several tangents regarding the demand for additional munchies, SCP-4966 listed the identification numbers of 14 D-Class personnel. Autopsies of each of these personnel revealed a small device in the cerebellum capable of psionic transmissions. As a reward for its help in uncovering the cause of a concerning security breach, SCP-4966 was given a bag of Tostitos brand tortilla chips, which it promptly consumed with great enthusiasm. SCP-4966 is kept within a modified humanoid containment cell, sized appropriately for the free movement of a domestic cat or creature of similar size. The cell is furnished with several pieces of cushioned furniture and recreational objects such as climbing towers, soft plush toys, and small plastic objects such as toy dinosaurs are also placed throughout the room. In addition to its toys, SCP-4966 is to be given socialization on a tri-weekly basis by the on-site researchers. Any tests involving SCP-4966 must be approved by Dr. Bannock. Several members of personnel have expressed an interest in providing SCP-4966 with additional toys and recreational objects, but the Foundation has insisted that these be purchased using personal funds rather than tapping into the Foundation's budget. As far as I know, SCP-4966 lives a relatively peaceful life in the aftermath of its brush with the Chaos Insurgency. But it just goes to show that in the world of the SCP Foundation, nothing is ever as simple as it first appears. Even a soft, cuddly, squishy little plush toy can be the key to uncovering a web of secrets, conspiracy, and espionage. I'm just glad he got a nice snack after.
The storm wrenches the fishing vessel in half. The yawning sound of metal buckling and ripping can barely be heard over the explosive waves. Crew members pour out of the fragmented ship, washed away with the water, like ants fleeing a flooding nest. The deck lurches and tips upwards into the air. A wave crashes against it, almost knocking the sailor off the railing, but he clings on for dear life. Soaked through, shivering violently, and feeling the dreaded exhaustion creeping into his limbs, he looks around helplessly as his crewmates drown around him. Only one man remains on the deck with him. But the captain's usual steely confidence has gone. Behind the man's bushy beard and grizzled skin, the sailor sees a little boy scared out of his mind. The captain grabs the sailor by the scruff of the neck and hauls him close enough for them to shout over the sound of the seas around them. "I saw her!" The captain's rambling and ranting, repeating himself and gesticulating wildly at the seas around them. "A naiad! I saw her in the water this morning. Our voyage was cursed from the start. We should never have left port. She's in the water now, she..." A colossal wave throws what is left of the boat through the air. The railing slips through the sailor's fingers as he flies high between the waves. For a moment, the world stands still. It's like he's a gull hovering in place, surveying the carnage beneath him. And there in the water, what looks like. But the world isn't standing still. He hurtles back towards the ocean and slams into it, hard enough to knock the air clean out of his lungs. Icy water tugs at him, pulling him downwards, deeper and deeper, colder and colder. Like arms wrapping around him, dragging him. The sailor wakes with a start. Water laps at his face. What were once hulking waves are now little more than ripples. He spits out a mouthful of sand and shakes his head. His body's trembling violently from the cold, but the warm glow of the sun on his back is already doing its best to help him. How on earth had he survived that? There are groans all around him. Dotted along the beach are his fellow fishermen. He hasn't got the energy to count them, but it doesn't look like all of them. Just ahead of him, further up the beach, sits the captain. Rocking back and forth, trembling, the captain noiselessly points a finger out to sea. Using what little energy he has left, the sailor rolls onto his back to see the silhouette of a woman standing there on the water. No, not a silhouette. The morning sunlight is shining straight through her, as if she's made of nothing but water. She steps delicately across the surface of the water, walking towards the coughing fishermen who have all seen her by now. There's a delicacy to how she walks, tiptoeing gently on the rippling water, as if scared of disturbing it even slightly. The light dances and glitters on her skin like it does across the ocean. No, not skin. She really is made of water. Every inch of her is composed entirely of what looks like the purest, cleanest water the sailor has ever seen. Was it her? The arms that he felt dragging him through the water? Did she save him? Did she save all of them? The water nymph waits with the men until the ambulances arrive. She walks across the sand, going between them. Every few minutes, she dips her toes back in the sea and takes what looks like a deep breath, even though she has no lungs to fill. Then she's back amongst them, offering noiseless comfort. There's an old abandoned house just up from the beach, what looks like the mansion of a former millionaire. In apparent fascination,
The nymph keeps going over to examine the ornate fountain in the courtyard. Even in a state of disrepair, the fountain is stunning. She lowers herself gently into the water and disappears under the surface, just as the first ambulance rounds the corner. As the paramedics wrap the foil blanket around the sailor and walk him to the vehicle, he catches the nymph poking her head out of the surface of the fountain's water. He's not the only one to see. Tucked just out of sight near the tree line is a nondescript black sedan with a group of men sitting inside. One of them takes a photograph of the water woman in the fountain, while another talks urgently over the phone. The sailor has barely been in the back of the ambulance for 2 minutes before one of the men from the car approaches him. The man holds an expensive-looking watch in his hand. "Excuse me, sir, does this belong to you?" The sailor sits up suspiciously. He's about to open his mouth to refute the man when the needle penetrates his thigh and the amnestic fills his bloodstream. By the time the sailor arrives at the hospital, all his memories of the previous 24 hours have slipped away into the abyss. The containment team is at work in less than 6 hours, while a group of agents, dressed in scrubs, follow the ambulances to the hospital to ensure all accounts of the ship's crash have been entirely erased. Another team sets to work, cordoning off the beach. A tourist family, excited about their day at the beach, argue with the disguised agents cordoning off the road. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but there's nothing we can do. A shark sighting is a shark sighting. We just can't risk it today." Meanwhile, a steady stream of construction vehicles rumbles past, followed by a large Home Depot truck. They all pull up outside the mansion, where a team of agents has the fountain surrounded. Tasers and cattle prods at the ready, they grip their weapons at even the slightest ripple of water. Excavators get to work quickly, drilling at the ground around the fountain and cracking through the paving stones. And before anyone nearby has any clue of what's happening, the fountain has been removed, loaded into the back of the watertight fake Home Depot truck, and has disappeared over the horizon. The water nymph refuses to poke her head out of the water the whole way. The world around her is dark and dry. It shakes and rumbles for hours. The beautiful fountain she'd climbed into just a few hours earlier now feels tiny. There's barely enough water in here for her to swim in a circle. She'd always observed these strange-looking vehicles from a distance, lifting her eyes up above the waves for a few minutes to watch them crawling along the dark roads with their 18 wheels. She'd always wondered what was inside all of them, with their colorful paints and strange names. At least she now has some idea of what Home Depot does. Part of their business model evidently involves kidnapping. To stop the panic rising up too high in her chest, the water nymph focuses on stilling the water in the fountain. All of the bumps and turns in the road, she focuses all her energy on holding all the water in place and keeping it level. If the water around her is still, maybe she won't feel so scared. It isn't really working. But at least her precious little amount of fresh water isn't spilling out all over the watertight inside of the container. She's just about convinced herself that she's used to her cage when it suddenly stops. The rumble sound cuts out, the shaking stops, and voices somewhere outside discuss what to do with her, saying words like containment protocol, initial testing, and security measures. The water nymph dips her head back below the surface of the water as the rear doors open. She's going to make the most of this. That's what she's decided. Having spent all her life underwater, observing the humans from afar, she'd always dreamed of one day meeting one. There had been moments, sure, times when she'd wave at a child on the deck of a ferry or guide a ship through the fog, but up close? Never. They look funny, these people. When you see them up close, they're such strange colors, so fleshy and hairy. It's bizarre not being able to see through them. How are they supposed to swim? These humans in particular are even more strange than the others. Dressed in long white coats, always walking around with clipboards and strange little devices that light up and make sounds when they poke them. She wonders if they get sick of having their legs stuck to the ground all the time. What if they see something interesting floating above them? They can't just swim upwards. They need to get on one of those plane things. This will be fun, getting to meet real people for the first time. She keeps telling herself that because if she doesn't, it all becomes too scary. They haven't put her back in the sea, a river, or even a pool. They've just kept her in her fountain. It sits right in the middle of a brightly lit chamber. 4 white walls, a white ceiling, and a white floor. 1 white door. The lights are always on, the temperature always the same. For days and days, she just sits in her fountain, alone. Occasionally, one of the humans will come in wearing a big rubber suit. They look totally ridiculous. Taking big, slow steps, they'll approach her fountain. The first time, she jumped up out of the water to greet the human, doing her best to wave like she's seen them do to each other. But the human immediately turned around and ran back out of the chamber. So next time, she was slow and gentle, raising both her hands innocently and letting the human approach without doing anything. The human lowered some kind of glass container into the water in her fountain and took some of the water away. He must have been thirsty. She's seen the humans get like that sometimes. How they're not thirsty all the time, she has no clue. It doesn't look like there's a drop of water anywhere in them, except for their eyes. She tries to catch the human's eye as he leaves, but he just walks straight out of her chamber, carrying away the little container of water. But this time, she has an idea. She waits patiently for a few days, waiting for another one of the humans to come and see her. It's hard to tell how much time has passed because it's always sunny in here, but it must have been a few days by now. Sure enough, the door opens, and a human in another big rubber costume comes in. She rises out of the water slowly so as not to scare them and lets her form melt and shift. Feeling her body flow into a different shape, she does her best to copy the human's big rubber suit. She's practiced this for years in the sea, copying the shapes of different humans she sees. The human stops walking and stares at her. She tries to wave again. The human waves back. Success! For almost a minute, they stand there waving at each other. She knows this is longer than most humans would wave at each other, but it's just so exciting she can't help herself. Maybe this will be her first friend. Imagine that, having a human friend. The human takes a hesitant step towards her. This is her chance. Lifting herself up and out of the water, the nymph steps out of her fountain for the first time. She pauses, careful not to spook the human. They do scare very easily, but this time, he stays. Better than that, he takes another step towards her, then another until they're within touching distance. She can feel the water beating in her chest, pumping excitedly through her body. The human has another one of those glass containers in its hand. It raises the container up slowly for her to look at. She leans in to see why this strange little creature is showing her a piece of glass. She's seen these 1,000 times before in the seas. There's glass and plastic everywhere for her to look at. What's so special about this one? The human takes a swipe at her. The glass container strikes the side of her head and extracts a chunk of water. She staggers away, hands raised in fear. What had she done wrong? Why did the human do that to her? She feels faint. Her head swims and not in the usual pleasant way. Her body works hard to redistribute all the water around her body, rebuilding that part of herself in a split second, but it doesn't stop the pain or the sudden wave of tiredness. She stumbles back into the fountain and plunges beneath the surface, letting the water merge with her body again. But the surface of the fountain isn't still. It trembles and shakes as she lies at the bottom in fear. Why had the human done that to her? By the time she has the courage to peek out of the water again, the human is gone. The lights in the ceiling seem brighter than ever. The next day is the first time she really misses the sea. She would race from coast to coast, feeling herself getting dragged along in the ocean gyres as she flowed between continents. She would study the rainbow colors of the Great Barrier Reef before catching a current to Venice or Jamaica. She'd hug the bottom of cruise ships and dance in and out of the propellers on the backs of cargo ships. But here, in her cell, all she can do is swim around her fountain, round and round in circles. That is, until the humans return. 3 of them come into her room, each carrying strange long objects. She's not sure she's seen those things before and is desperate for a closer look. But after what happened with the glass the other day, it doesn't seem like a good idea. She still hasn't worked out what she did wrong there, but clearly the human was not happy with her for some reason. Best to be very gentle with them for the time being, until they're proper friends. The 3 humans have a box with them, full of water. She's so excited to see it, she leaps straight out of the fountain before realizing she needs to be careful. Patiently as she can, she approaches the box and touches it. The humans nod encouragingly. Her excitement overwhelms her, and she dives right in. It feels so good to have fresh water to explore, even if it's just a small tank. She barely even notices as they close the lid on her and wheel her into a different room. A glass wall lines the edge of this new chamber. Funny little humans in white coats stand behind it, making notes. She climbs out of her little tank and waves at them. It's a smaller room than her normal one. Why have they brought her in here? A slamming noise behind her makes her jump, and she spins around to see the 3 humans have wheeled away her little tanks on wheels, leaving her alone in the room. She looks around with a little anxiety. There's nowhere to swim in here. Have they made a mistake? She can't be here without water. Doing her best to copy human movements, she tries to mime to the people behind the glass that she needs her water. They don't seem to understand her, just start scribbling even more things on their clipboards. It's warm in here. Warm and dry. This isn't good. In no time at all, she can feel herself drying out. An hour goes by, then another. She's never been out of the water for this long. What are they doing? Don't they understand what she is? Her head starts to feel faint. She slumps down on the floor and turns herself into a ball. Shaped like this, hopefully, she won't be evaporating so fast. Then they'll give her the water back. For hours she sits in a ball, waiting, until mercifully, her little tank on wheels returns and she's taken back to her fountain. They do the same to her the next day and the day after that, starving her for hours, then returning her to her fountain. They top up the water in it occasionally, but other than that, they don't seem to be doing anything nice for her at all. Are they doing this on purpose? Surely not. She's their friend. She's being kind, doing all of their weird games even when she doesn't want to. Humans aren't cruel, they wouldn't do that to her. But then she finds herself in a different situation entirely. They do the same as they've been doing for the previous few days, wheeling her into the testing chamber and making her stand there on her own. But it's colder today, much colder. She tries to explain to them through the glass, rubbing her shoulders and shivering, but they just keep making their notes. This isn't good. She can't stand the cold. It's not good for her. Painful crystals start forming on the surface of her skin, stabbing into her and solidifying her body. She cries out noiselessly, but the humans keep going until she feels herself losing consciousness. Weeks go by, and with each experiment they do, the water nymph worries more and more that these humans aren't really her friends. They've started giving her mazes, complex plastic structures that she gets forced unceremoniously into, where she has to swim through various pipes and tubes until she can push a button on the other side. At first, she was expecting a prize. Maybe this is why they had her kept here for so long. They needed help solving these puzzles, and their fleshy bodies couldn't fit through the tubes. But nothing happens when she presses the button. They just pull a plug and drain her out of the bottom. Today, she's had enough. When are they going to put her back in the ocean? She's just going to wait here at the start of the maze until they tell her. It's only fair. The water in her chest leaps for joy as a human enters the test chamber and approaches her. She raises out of the water and waves to greet him, just as he lifts the long, strange device in his hand and jabs it into her chest. The electricity shoots all through her body and sets her mind ablaze. It takes all her strength not to burst into 1,000 droplets. Convulsing and crying, she falls backwards into the maze. The human brandishes the weapon at her again. She has nowhere to go but into the maze. She solves it in a split second, but as she presses the button, she feels a sinking feeling settling over her. What if they don't want to let her out? It's all her fault. What was she thinking? Her one shot at making friends, and she'd blown it. She sits crying in her fountain, feeling her tears flow into the water around her and back into her body. It was the acid. She hates acid, and always has. She'd swam near a factory once and got a dose of it. It hurt, more than anything she'd ever felt before. It would flow into her chest and sit there, burning and burning. She can still feel it now. So when the humans in the rubber suits had poured some into her fountains, she'd lost her temper, slamming into them with all her force. For months, they've been hurting her, jabbing her and exhausting her. But they're her friends, right? And you shouldn't hurt your friends. You definitely shouldn't kill your friends. Shouldn't rip open their rubber suits and force yourself down their throats, drowning them in their own bodies. Her fountain's red with blood and burns from the acid. And it's all her fault. What had she done wrong to make them treat her like this? Why couldn't they just be friends? After a few weeks, a group of humans come in and clean up the mess, refilling her fountain with clean water. She doesn't lift her head above the surface. They install a pipe above her fountain that drip feeds water onto her. Drip, drip, drip. And just like that, she's no longer seen as human. Drip, drip, drip. The lights burn white. The door stays closed. Drip, drip, drip. The water nymph sits in her fountain. Drip, drip, drip. After a year, she stops crying. A year after that, she gives up on thinking, too. 3 years of near silence pass, with only the sound of dripping water from the pipe, until the door to her chamber opens. Something flutters in her chest. She lifts her head out of the water. A friend?
A knife in the dark, bloody teeth, and an appetite about to bring an end to one of history's most infamous monsters. The year is 1888, and the streets of London are teeming with tension and fear. In the daytime, people struggle to find work, fighting each other tooth and nail for scraps of opportunity. The sunlight only serves to illuminate the grime and misery, the workhouses and the factories, the smokestacks pumping poison into the sky. At night, though, it's even worse.
The gas lamps provide only ghostly wisps of dim light, just enough to see a stranger's shadow from the corner of your eye, but not enough to see if the glint of something shiny in his hand is his pocket watch or his knife. You might glance over your shoulder for a closer look, but he's already disappeared into the fog, if he was ever even there at all. These streets feel haunted, even on the quietest of nights, but lately, there are rumors swirling in the air of something far worse than a ghost skulking through the alleys. More real than the devil, more evil than any ordinary man, there's a killer on the prowl, and his name is Jack the Ripper. At first, most citizens refused to take notice of his presence, writing off his victims as women of ill repute, bound to meet a dreadful demise sooner or later. But as the bodies piled up, the sheer brutality of the killings became impossible to ignore. Now, everyone is on edge, particularly if their daily business takes them to London's East Side, where the murders began. Once hoped to be a place of opportunity for those traveling to London from afar to seek their fortunes, Whitechapel has become a den of sin and terror. No one can breathe easy here, not until the Ripper is caught, if he ever is. There are theories, of course, accused noblemen, surgeons, butchers, and doctors. Whoever the culprit is, one thing is certain: he knows his way around a knife. Still, no one suspect seems to stick, and no one theory is compelling enough to lead to an arrest. Privately, behind locked doors where no policeman can hear them whispering, the people of Whitechapel are beginning to wonder whether the Ripper will ever be found. Perhaps this nightmare won't cease until the streets run red with blood. But even in the middle of hell on earth, day-to-day matters must still be attended to. So even as he worries for the lives of his customers and his own livelihood, the owner of a local pub posts a job listing, seeking a new cook. He doesn't need anything fancy, he can't pay for much, just a fellow who knows his way around a kitchen and can cook up decent enough food without accidentally slicing his fingers off. Still, he's not sure there's anyone out there who would be too happy to take a job so close to Jack the Ripper's domain at the moment. But the next day, as he comes in to unlock the doors and set up for the day, he finds an applicant waiting for him outside, grinning ear to ear. He's a massive fellow, towering over the pub owner at a height he's never seen before outside of a circus performer on stilts. But he greets the pub owner with a firm handshake and follows him inside, though he has to hunch a great deal to fit through the door. It's not as if there's a line of applicants out the door, so the pub owner goes ahead and hires him as the new cook. The cook is a Frenchman, but he won't hold it against him. That night, when the pub opens for business, the new cook gets right to work. From his disposition, one would never know he's working for pennies in a dingy pub in the most dangerous part of town. He bustles around the modest kitchen, chopping meat and singing in a warm, loud voice that carries through the whole building, bringing some much-needed cheer to the exhausted customers. Pretty soon, they get a taste of the new cook's work: mutton and potatoes and juicy meat pies. Whoever this new worker is, the crowd is pleased to have him around. The owner does advise the cook to stay in the kitchen, though. His food and his singing may be popular, but his appearance might frighten the already skittish regulars. There's plenty to be afraid of these days, no need to add a giant to the mix. When the pub closes up for the night, the owner stops for a moment to chat with his new cook. He can't help but be curious about the man, where he came from, what brought him to London. The cook tells him, tearfully, that he was once a soldier in the French army, but that he lost his military career following a tragic accident he refused to disclose the details of. After that, he worked in a circus, then as a private chef in the home of a wealthy French family, until he was thrown out over a forbidden love affair with his boss's daughter. The pub owner isn't sure he believes a word of it, but he nods along just the same. He asks the cook when he first arrived in London. The 1st of April, he says, and with that, he heads off home, leaving the pub owner alone with his thoughts, the color draining from his face. April 1st was only 2 days before the first Jack the Ripper victim was discovered. It couldn't be. Could it? As the pub owner embarked on his journey home, he replayed the image of the cook's work that night over and over in his mind. The man was plenty competent with a knife, that was certain. He was strong enough to kill quickly, too. With those hands, he could squeeze the life out of someone before they even got the chance to scream. He could have done it. But why would he? He seemed like such a friendly man, odd though he was. And he was odd, almost frightening. He had clearly lied about his past as well. What reason would he have for doing that, if not to conceal a dark and terrible secret? The pub owner lies awake all night, horrific visions of his new cook keeping him from sleep. The next day, the pub owner's suspicions begin to fester and grow. He notices things he didn't pick up on before, the strange way the cook always speaks through his teeth, the deft way that he handles a butcher knife, slicing through the cuts of meat that he brings to the pub himself. What butcher is he going to? Where's he finding so much meat in such scarce times? The owner shudders at the possibilities. His customers are starting to take notice of his change in attitude, too. They see the sweat dotting his brow, his furtive glances toward the kitchen, and the way his hands shake when he brings them their plates of food. Several customers corner the owner and demand an explanation. These days, they can't let any unusual behavior go on for long. Something sinister could be afoot, after all. The pub owner relents and confesses his suspicions that his newly hired cook might be the Ripper himself. Not only that, but he's afraid the meat he's been preparing might not be sourced from any livestock, but from more of the Ripper's victims. It was an unwise choice to admit these fears to a group of men driven to the edge of reason by their own dread, bodies in the streets, and a bit too much ale. They swarm the kitchen to confront the cook and are shocked at the sight of the behemoth they find there. The cook greets them with his usual smile, but they aren't having any of it. They attack him in spite of his intimidating size, pummeling him with their fists. The cook tries to reason with the men, but they are determined to get an answer out of him, and his previously unfailing smile falters. He opens his mouth wide and, in a truly shocking display, gobbles up one of the men in 2 quick bites. He spits out a shoe and it flies across the room, hitting another one of the men in the face. There's silence for a long moment, and then sheer pandemonium. The surviving men tear out of the pub, spilling into the streets in a drunken, panic-stricken mob. Wiping his mouth, the cook turns to see his boss, staring at him with wide eyes, frozen to the spot in fear. With a polite bow, the cook gives his resignation, apologizes for the disruption, and turns to see himself out. Meanwhile, the pub patrons are cornering a policeman, demanding he follows them to the location of a giant, man-eating monster who they believe to be the Ripper. The policeman laughs in their faces and advises them to head home and sleep off their drinks before they get themselves into any more trouble. With a full belly, but without a job, and without anywhere else to go, the cook ducks out the door to the pub and begins to stroll slowly down the dark, dingy streets. Up ahead, he sees a woman walking alone. She drops something on the ground, a small coin purse. She doesn't notice it fall, and keeps walking. But the cook is very much a gentleman, in spite of his cannibalistic indiscretion before. He hurries over and bends to pick it up. When he looks back at the woman, he sees a man creeping up behind her. The shadowy man draws a knife and lifts his arm, preparing to strike. The cook cries out to warn the woman, and she turns, letting out a blood-curdling scream at the sight of both the would-be killer and the giant, with blood still dripping from his chin. She picks up her skirts and runs as fast as she can, disappearing down a nearby alley and out of sight. The cook still holds her coin purse in his massive hand. There's no way she'll come back to retrieve it now. The man with the knife turns on the cook with a roar of primal rage. He slashes at the giant with his knife, but it merely glances off of the enormous man's tough skin, not drawing so much as a single drop of blood. He tries again and again, but fails to make even a mark. Frustrated, exhausted, and still a little bit hungry, the giant grabs hold of the attempted killer, lifts him into the air, opens his mouth wide, and swallows him whole in a single gulp. The knife, still stained with the blood of his previous victims, clatters to the ground. The cook sighs and tucks the coin purse into his pocket. Then he continues on his way, walking out of London and on to the next chapter of his life's grand adventure. He has no idea that his climactic meal in Whitechapel was none other than the infamous Jack the Ripper, and the people of London will never know of the unintentional act of heroism he committed that day. They will only remember the fear and the sight of a giant devouring a man alive. But soon enough, that will fade from memory, replaced with relief when no new victims are found, and then replaced again with a mystery that will endure for hundreds of years. Though that cook was no Ripper, he was also clearly no ordinary man. Before they decided to drive him out of town, the people of Whitechapel had, unbeknownst to them, been eating and drinking with SCP-082. SCP-082 is, according to his genetic makeup, a perfectly ordinary human. However, one look at SCP-082 makes it clear that he is far from ordinary. Some sort of external process has caused him to grow to an enormous size, standing at 8 feet tall and weighing around 700 pounds. Foundation researchers are divided in opinion over the exact cause of SCP-082's unique proportions. Some theorize that it is some sort of mutation. Others propose an extreme hormone imbalance. Some believe it to be chemical in nature, while others insist that only a supernatural force could be responsible for such a dramatic deviation from the norm. Whatever the case may be, SCP-082 is a formidable and visually impressive specimen. His head is bald and slightly pointed, his chin and jaw are large and round. His nose is bulbous, and his eyes are dark and sunken. His body has a high fat content, but also contains notable muscle mass, and his physical strength should not be discounted. His forearms have a circumference of around 28 inches, and his fists are nearly an entire foot across the knuckles. Suffice it to say, he is not the sort of opponent you would want to come up against in a fight, and certainly not someone to antagonize, though medical examinations of his body indicate that at least a few likely ill-fated individuals have tried over the years. His skin is covered with scars, and though his x-rays are difficult to read due to the density of muscle tissue, scans have indicated that there are dozens of bullets and several blades, from knives and swords alike, buried in the man's flesh. Clearly, SCP-082 has been through a great deal of hardship, but you wouldn't know it from his disposition. He is gregarious and polite, with a personality as big as the rest of him. Oh, that reminds me, I've been extremely rude. He has a name. It's Fernand. At least, that's what he says. Fernand speaks fluent French, but is proficient in English as well, though he speaks with a heavy accent. Whenever he does speak, he does so with a smile, talking through his tightly clenched and massive teeth. Occasionally, he clenches these teeth so hard that his gums will begin bleeding from the effort. The reason for this is unknown, but the SCP Foundation considers it normal behavior for Fernand, whatever that means. I have my own personal theory regarding Fernand's penchant for clenching his teeth, but I won't get into that just yet. Fernand does occasionally open his mouth all the way and separate his teeth, but only when he is eating or singing. He is quite the musical talent, serenading the SCP Foundation with his takes on well-known classical music, as well as long-forgotten drinking songs and the occasional sea shanty. He loves to sing while cooking, which he is permitted to do under strict Foundation supervision. He is allowed access to a rudimentary set of cooking implements whenever he prepares his food, including a butcher knife that he also uses to shave his unusually thick facial hair. He is given various ingredients to prepare on request, with the stipulation that these ingredients must not be too expensive or human in origin. In spite of his off-putting appearance and tendency to speak through his teeth, Fernand is easily one of the more likable anomalies contained by the Foundation. He doesn't express overt hostility like SCP-682, nor does he attempt to diagnose staff with any sort of pestilence like SCP-049. All he seemingly wants to do is cook, sing, and play dress-up. Did I mention his costume trunk yet? Well, he has one. Some of his favorite outfits include a tuxedo, complete with top hat and a monocle, a military uniform serves of the French Revolution, a ball gown that comes with an elegant fan and matching beaded purse, and a clown costume that includes a wig and a trick water-squirting flower in its pocket. New costume pieces are made on request in order to keep Fernand's morale high. According to my findings, in-house costumers are currently hard at work making Fernand a detective costume, a chef's hat, and a set of footy pajamas. Fernand is an indisputable charmer, greeting Foundation researchers with a wide smile, a joke, and more often than not, an invitation to join him for dinner. Unfortunately, those same staff members occasionally find themselves on the menu. In spite of all his endearing qualities, Fernand has the unfortunate habit of routinely snapping, giving into his voracious appetite, and eating his visitors alive. He doesn't intend to do so, and frequently expresses regret at his poor manners. After all, having company for dinner doesn't mean you eat your company, but still he can't help himself, no matter how recent his latest meal was. Though I have yet to confirm this hypothesis, I believe this cannibalistic impulse to devour others may be the reason for Fernand's constant clenching of his teeth. Whether consciously or not, I think he is attempting to hold off on attacking for as long as he can, before he inevitably succumbs to the hunger once more. When his gums bleed, it could be a sign that one of his attacks is drawing near. Again, I have yet to confirm this, but it seems entirely possible. It's unlikely that Fernand will ever be able to verify this for himself, as his connection to the truth is tenuous at best. Though he is highly intelligent in terms of his memory, puzzle-solving skills, and grasp of language, Fernand struggles to differentiate between fact and fiction when consuming media. He assumes that any movie or television show he watches is depicting a real person, and that any book he reads is essentially a biography. This doesn't limit his enjoyment of this media. On the contrary, he gets a great deal of joy from watching films and reading books, particularly works of fiction revolving around Hannibal Lecter, who Fernand has described as his favorite person, and someone he would very much like to meet one day. To make matters even more interesting, Fernand does understand the concept of lying. He's able to identify when someone is lying directly to him, and also displays signs of being a compulsive liar himself, particularly when it comes to his personal history. Over the course of his containment, he is claimed to be a vampire, a homunculus, beloved Sesame Street character Big Bird, also beloved actor and wrestler Andre the Giant, Napoleon Bonaparte, French comic book character Obélix, the Foundation's own Dr. Bright, the Incredible Hulk, Alexander the Great, Captain Hook, and Detective Sherlock Holmes. He has also claimed at different times and once on the same day to be both Dr. Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster. When called out directly on these lies, Fernand offers only this explanation: "But I only lie when it's through my teeth," which I have to admit is pretty funny. SCP-082, Fernand, is currently contained in enlarged living quarters in Armed Biocontainment Area 14. As he is unfazed by most standard weaponry, his cooperation has been ensured through deception rather than physical force. Fernand has been led to believe that he is acting King of France, placed in a secret palace for his own protection from potential assassins. Any personnel that interacts with Fernand must address him as if he were, in fact, the King of France, and any deviation from the charade is met with swift discipline. Any housekeeping done in 082's containment area must be performed by Class D personnel only, as it poses too much of a risk to non-disposable staff. Guards assigned to SCP-082's containment will receive Level 2 clearance, but are not permitted to interact directly with SCP-082, no matter how friendly he is, no matter how many knock-knock jokes he tells them, and no matter how he tries to entice them into a round of karaoke. SCP-082 is a curious mix of congenial and threatening, the consummate host who loves to sing and cook for anyone willing to sit at his table. He's also strong enough to snap a spine in half, and has teeth that can crack open skulls, a skill that he demonstrates with stomach-churning regularity. Still, he seems to genuinely enjoy the company of others, and has an earnest, playful spirit. From his giving spirit to his diet, SCP-082 really gives a new meaning to the word humanitarian. If you ever have the chance to meet him, just be careful not to let your guard all the way down, because there's a fine, fine line between being his dinner guest and being his dinner.
The sun dipped low over Lowell, Massachusetts, casting golden light across the town. At a corner hardware store, the bell above the door chimed softly, announcing a customer's arrival. The man wandered the aisles, his eyes scanning the shelves stacked with familiar tools and trinkets. Among them, something unusual caught his attention. A sleek, metallic clock sat alone on a shelf. Its design was modern, almost futuristic, and its polished surface gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The man picked it up, surprised by its weight. The clock felt alive in his hands, the ticking faint and irregular, almost hesitant. At the counter, the cashier frowned, turning the clock over in his hands. "Never seen this one before," he muttered. With no price tag or barcode, he shrugged. "Take it, on the house." Later that evening, the clock took its place on a mantel. Its odd rhythm filled the quiet house, a faint ticking that seemed to stutter and syncopate. As the hours passed, the ticking softened, fading into silence. At precisely 2:13 a.m., an explosion ripped through the stillness. The blast shook the neighborhood, shattering windows and causing alarms to blare. In the living room, the mantel was scorched, the clock obliterated. Scattered across the floor lay the remains of its owner, their chest torn open. Among the debris was something that didn't belong, brightly colored fragments that shimmered in the moonlight. Candy. Smoke billowed from the chimneys of Metzger's factory mill, painting the horizon in shades of gray. At the gates, workers shuffled in before dawn. Their movements were slow, their breaths shallow. The clang of the iron gate closing behind them marked the start of another endless day. Inside, the factory floor was alive with noise. Machines roared and clattered, their steel arms moving in perfect rhythm. The air was thick with the scent of oil and the metallic tang of sweat. Metzger stood on the platform above it all. His eyes swept over the workers below, cold and calculating. The roar of the machine seemed to flow through him, a sound he knew intimately. "Faster," he said. The foreman at his side stiffened. He didn't question the command, Instead, he barked orders, his voice sharp enough to cut through the din. On the floor, the workers picked up their pace. Hands blurred as they fed the machines, faces twisted with strain, but no one dared stop. The rhythm of the factory demanded it. One worker, a boy barely old enough to be there, hesitated. His fingers fumbled over a bundle of thread, and the machine jammed, producing a metallic groan. The boy froze. His eyes darted toward the looming figure of the foreman, who was already moving toward him. The cane came down hard across the boy's shoulder. He winced, but didn't cry out.
"You jam the machine, you waste time,"
the foreman snapped. His cane pointed to another worker nearby.
"Take his place."
The boy stumbled back, clutching his arm. The machines didn't stop. They were relentless. Metzger sat in his office. The roar of the factory floor below was a constant hum beneath his feet. He didn't mind it. It was familiar, a reminder of the work being done. His desk was covered in ledgers. Numbers filled the pages, precise and clean. Profits, losses, expenses. Metzger's pen moved steadily, each stroke deliberate. He paused only when the door creaked open behind him. The foreman stepped inside, hat in hand. He hesitated, lingering near the threshold like a man about to deliver bad news. Metzger didn't look up. He merely gestured for the foreman to speak.
"There's been talk,"
the foreman said. The pen stopped mid-stroke. Metzger's eyes flicked up, narrowing slightly.
"Talk?"
The foreman shifted his weight, glancing at the floor.
Some of the workers, they're unhappy.
Hours, conditions." Metzger leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. His hand rested on the desk, fingers tapping against the wood.
"They're saying things, sir, about striking."
The room fell silent, except for the muffled roar of the machines below. Metzger's gaze didn't waver.
"Stop it,"
he said finally. The foreman blinked, as if the simplicity of the command caught him off guard.
"Sir?"
"Stop it," Metzger repeated, leaning forward slightly. His voice was calm, but his words carried the weight of a blade.
"Do whatever it takes. They work here because I allow it. Let them remember that."
The foreman swallowed hard.
"Yes, sir."
Metzger picked up his pen again, the conversation already forgotten. That night, the factory gates stood open, their iron bars slick with mist. The machines had finally gone quiet, their relentless rhythm stilled. Metzger stood alone outside, his hands tucked behind his back. The street beyond the factory was dark, save for the faint glow of a distant gas lamp. Beneath it, shadows moved. He saw them clearly now, a small group of workers gathered in whispered conversation. Their faces were tired, but there was something else in their eyes, something sharp. Defiance. Metzger watched from the shadows, his jaw tightening. Their voices were too soft to hear, but the energy was unmistakable. They were planning something. He could feel it. His breath was slow and measured as he turned back to the factory.
"Let them try,"
he muttered. His lips curled into a faint smile. The factory gates were blocked at dawn, workers standing shoulder to shoulder, their faces pale but resolute. They carried signs hastily painted on scraps of wood, the words smudged but clear enough. Fair wages, safer conditions, no more 16-hour shifts. Inside the factory, Metzger watched from the second-floor balcony. His foreman stood behind him, shifting nervously.
"They're not budging,"
the foreman said, his voice tense.
"They will,"
Metzger replied, calm as ever. He gestured to the gates below.
"How long can they hold out without pay, without food?"
The foreman hesitated.
"Some of the townsfolk are on their side. They're collecting donations."
Metzger's eyes narrowed slightly, the faintest crack in his composure. He gestured to be left alone. Metzger leaned back in his chair as the foreman left, the sound of boots fading down the hall. He reached for the ledger on his desk, flipping it open. Metzger spent hours at his desk, poring over ledgers that refused to balance. The profits he'd built his empire on were bleeding out, lost to strikes and delays. The lamp on his desk flickered, the glow barely illuminating the room. Outside, the faint echoes of chanting lingered in the cold night air. Metzger closed the ledger with a sharp snap and leaned back in his chair. The numbers were worse than he'd feared. He traced a finger along the desk's edge, his jaw tightening.
"They'll break before I do."
he murmured to himself. The flickering light caught his attention again, drawing his gaze. The shadows in the corner of the room seemed to stretch unnaturally. He blinked, convinced it was a trick of the failing lamp, but when he looked again, the shadows moved.
"You've done well,"
a voice said, low and smooth. Metzger froze. His eyes darted to the corner, where a figure now stood. He hadn't heard the door open. The figure was tall, impeccably dressed in a dark suit that seemed to shimmer faintly, almost as though it weren't entirely solid.
"You shouldn't be here,"
Metzger said, keeping his voice steady. The figure stepped forward, its movements deliberate. Its features were wrong. Metzger couldn't quite grasp them, as if they shifted slightly whenever he tried to focus.
"I go where I'm needed,"
the figure said, its tone calm.
"And tonight, you need me."
"What do you want?"
Metzger asked. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if the question amused it.
"It isn't about what I want. It's about what you need."
The figure gestured broadly, its hand sweeping toward the ledgers and the faint sound of protests outside.
"Your empire is crumbling. You're clinging to control, but your grip is slipping."
Metzger's jaw tightened. His hand rested on the desk, fingers drumming against the wood.
"I've weathered worse storms,"
he said, though the words felt hollow. The figure leaned forward slightly, its shadow stretching unnaturally across the desk.
"Not like this. You've done well with the tools at your disposal, but they're crude, outdated. I can refine them."
Metzger didn't reply immediately. His gaze shifted to the flickering lamp, the tension in his shoulders growing heavier.
"What are you offering?"
he asked finally. The figure reached into its jacket and withdrew a slim, black case. It set the case down on the desk, its movement smooth and deliberate.
"Salvation,"
the figure said.
"Machines that never break, workers that never tire, profits that never dwindle. Your empire will rise to heights you've only dreamed of."
Metzger stared at the case. His instinct told him to push it away, but his ambition kept him rooted.
"And what do you want in return?"
The figure's smile widened, though it wasn't reassuring.
"Only what's necessary."
The room grew colder, the flickering lamp casting erratic shadows. Metzger reached for the case, his fingers brushing the cool surface. It clicked open easily, revealing a single sheet of paper. The symbols on the page shimmered faintly, their shapes shifting and writhing, as if alive. Metzger leaned closer, squinting at the incomprehensible script.
"What does it say?"
he asked, his voice quieter now.
"You expect me to sign something I can't even read?"
The figure chuckled softly, a sound like metal grinding against stone.
"You don't need to read it. You only need to understand this. Progress demands sacrifice. You've always known that."
The words struck like a hammer. Metzger's fingers curled into a fist, his gaze shifting from the paper to the figure.
"And if I refuse?"
he asked. The figure didn't blink. Its presence filled the room, its shadow stretching along the walls.
"Then your empire falls. You become just another name forgotten by history. A lesson for the next man who dares to dream as you have."
Metzger's breath slowed. His eyes dropped back to the paper, the symbols seeming to pulse faintly, matching the rhythm of his heartbeat. He picked up the pen. The weight of it felt unnatural in his hand. His name formed slowly on the page, the ink sinking into the surface as though it were alive. As the final stroke dried, the figure snapped the case shut.
"You've made the right choice,"
it said, stepping back. The room dimmed as the figure retreated into the shadows. By the time Metzger looked up, he was alone again. Beneath him, the floorboards hummed. The factory changed overnight. It began with the machines. They arrived without warning. Metzger had not ordered them, yet here they were, hulking, gleaming things unloaded from unmarked wagons in the dead of night. The workers whispered about them in hushed tones, their voices trembling with unease. The machines were unlike anything they had ever seen. Their surfaces gleamed unnaturally, untouched by rust or grime, and their designs defied logic. Pipes twisted at impossible angles, gears spun without power. When the workers passed too close, they swore they felt heat radiating from them, though no fire burned nearby. Metzger stood on the factory floor the morning they were installed, watching as the foreman struggled to assemble them. He did not intervene. His gaze was fixed on the largest of them all, a towering construct that dominated the center of the factory. The workers called it the Behemoth. It was a machine unlike any other, a labyrinth of twisting metal and endless conveyor belts. Pipes extended from its core, burrowing into the walls and floors, as if the factory itself were alive. Metzger's journal entry that night was brief but telling. The Behemoth does not sleep. It breathes. The first products were simple, bolts of silk so fine they shimmered in the light, tools crafted with a precision that no human hand could replicate. But the Behemoth's hunger grew. It demanded more raw material, and the workers labored endlessly to feed it. One day, the Behemoth produced something new. Metzger inspected the line personally. His eyes widened as he lifted a small, shining object from the conveyor belt. It was a toy, a delicate, mechanical bird with wings that fluttered when he turned a hidden key. He tested it once, twice. The wings moved perfectly, almost lifelike.
Remarkable,
he murmured. But the workers didn't share his awe. They whispered about the Behemoth in terrified tones, swearing they had heard it groan and shudder late at night. Some claimed it spoke, though they dared not repeat what it said. And then the Behemoth began to consume more than raw materials. Metzger noticed it first in the missing time cards, workers who had punched in, but never punched out.
Where are they going?
He asked one morning, his voice sharp as he stood before the foreman. The foreman looked away, his hands tightening around his cane.
I haven't seen them, sir.
Metzger's eyes narrowed.
You're lying.
The foreman swallowed, but didn't answer. The truth revealed itself soon enough. Metzger had descended to the lower levels one night, drawn by the rhythmic pounding that reverberated through the factory walls. His lantern cast jagged shadows as he followed the sound to a cavernous room he had never seen before. The Behemoth's pipes extended here, their surfaces slick with an unidentifiable substance. The pounding came from within. Metzger's lantern shook as he raised it higher, illuminating the walls. Bones. They were small, almost unrecognizable, but there was no mistaking what they were. His breath caught. The sound of footsteps behind him made him spin. Standing in the doorway was one of the new overseers, its faceless mask glinting in the light. Metzger opened his mouth to speak, but the overseer didn't move. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, as though observing him. Metzger turned and fled. The overseers became the new masters of the factory. They moved silently among the workers, their blank masks and rigid postures unnerving even the foreman. They never spoke, but their presence was enough to enforce obedience. Those who faltered or questioned too loudly were escorted away. They never returned. Metzger began spending more time in his office. He avoided the factory floor, avoiding the sight of the overseers and the sounds of the Behemoth's relentless hunger. One day, he noticed the silence in his home. His wife had not called for him that morning. His sons, usually loud and full of mischief, were nowhere to be found. Metzger searched the house, his voice growing hoarse as he called their names. When he returned to the factory that night, he demanded answers from the overseers.
Where are they?
He shouted, his voice echoing through the empty halls. The overseers stood motionless, their masks turned toward him.
Answer me!
Metzger roared. The overseers did not reply. Soon, Metzger's health began to fail. He wrote in his journal of constant headaches, of blood dripping from his nose without warning. His hands trembled as he worked, his vision blurring whenever he looked at the machines for too long. He felt the factory watching him, its hum growing louder in the dead of night. The Behemoth's hunger was insatiable now. It consumed everything: wood, metal, flesh. And it produced wonders. Toys that moved like living creatures, clothes that seemed to shimmer with their own light, weapons Metzger didn't recognize but knew instinctively were meant to destroy. On November 13, 1915, Randolph T. Metzger's body was found in his office. The official report claimed a gunshot wound to the head. But deep within the factory, the truth lay hidden. Metzger's brain was harvested, integrated into the behemoth itself. His voice echoed faintly in its endless hum, a ghost trapped within the machine. And the factory roared on. Metzger's legacy should have ended in that office, his broken body slumped in his chair. Yet the factory did not mourn its creator. It roared on, its labyrinth of pipes and machinery twisting deeper into the earth, consuming and transforming. What Metzger began, the factory perfected. For decades it waited in silence, an iron giant asleep beneath the misty horizon. But machines do not rest forever. The waiting ended with whispers, quiet at first, carried on the wind and through the voices of Lowell's weary residents. A wrench was found moving without touch, a mirror reflecting strangers' faces, toys twitching on shelves as if stirred by unseen hands. The candy was the first thread that tied it all together. Bright, perfect pieces that appeared in homes and stores, tucked into shopping bags or left behind on countertops. Those who found it soon learned its price. Foundation agents arrived under cover of night, their black vehicles slicing through Lowell's fog like scalpels. They scoured the town, their reports growing stranger with each discovery. A stuffed bear that hummed lullabies in a voice almost human. A wrench that twisted itself to fit the grip of its user's hand. A mirror that showed something just behind the viewer, always there, always waiting. Every anomaly led them to a single source, a factory long abandoned, its name eroded from history, but its shadow still falling heavy on the town. The structure loomed on the outskirts of Lowell, a relic of another era. Rusted smokestacks stabbed at the sky, skeletal reminders of its glory days. The gate, choked with ivy and tarnished with age, creaked open at the agent's touch.
Doesn't feel right,
one of them murmured, his voice barely audible over the groan of rusted hinges.
Does it ever?
His partner replied, stepping through. The courtyard was a graveyard of industry, littered with twisted beams and shattered glass. Faded posters whispered warnings from the past, their messages barely legible under layers of grime. A hard worker is a happy worker. The factory demands loyalty. Beneath the agent's boots, the ground trembled faintly, a rhythm too precise to be natural. It was a pulse, the memory of grinding gears buried deep within the earth. Inside, the air grew colder. Their flashlights cast long shadows down the hallways, illuminating pipes that jutted at impossible angles, their surfaces unnaturally smooth. Machines sat dormant, untouched by time, their gears gleaming with a strange vitality.
You hear that?
One of them whispered, stopping mid-step. Another agent turned, his flashlight sweeping the corridor.
I hear everything.
The further they ventured, the less human the factory became. It was alive now, bending to the will of something vast and unseen. They found the candy first. Small piles of it lined a conveyor belt that stretched into the darkness. The pieces glistened under the dim light. The hum of machinery surrounded them, a sound that grew louder the longer they lingered.
Why candy?
One agent asked, his voice uneasy. Another shook his head.
Not just candy. Look closer.
Then the grinding began. At first it was faint, like the stirring of a sleeping beast, but it grew quickly, echoing through the halls and rattling the very air. The agents froze as the sound built to a crescendo, the walls around them seeming to breathe with the vibrations.
What the hell's that?
One of them muttered, gripping his flashlight tighter. Nobody answered. At the heart of the factory, they found the door. It was massive, its rusted chains stretched taut across its surface. Warnings in dozens of languages covered the metal, some scrawled hastily, others etched with care. The markings glowed faintly, ancient symbols that defied understanding. The ground vibrated in perfect rhythm, a heartbeat that pulsed through their boots and up their spines. The air itself seemed to shift, heavy with a presence they couldn't see, but felt pressing against their skin.
Do we open it?
Someone asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The team leader hesitated. His hand hovered near the rusted chains, but the grinding sound grew deafening.
No,
he said finally, stepping back.
Whatever's behind that door, it doesn't need us to let it out.
Something stirred behind the door. They felt it before they saw anything. A vast, unknowable awareness watching from the shadows. The grinding sound reached its peak, a deafening roar that drowned out every other thought. And then, the door moved. The agent stood frozen as the chains rattled and the warnings burned brighter. The factory had waited long enough. It was awake. And somewhere deep within, a voice echoed through the endless labyrinth of steel and gears.
Gentlemen,
It said, smooth and triumphant.
I do declare the factory is back in business.
The anomaly in question, that has come to be designated as SCP-748, is no longer confined to Lowell. GPS readings suggest that it operates in tandem with hundreds of similar facilities scattered across the globe, from Tokyo to Liverpool, Sao Paulo, and beyond. These instances are linked through dimensional anomalies, allowing them to function as one unified entity. While the exact number of linked factories remains unknown, their combined scale defies containment and comprehension. At the core of the factory lies the Infinity Engine, an immense, self-sustaining production system. Its primary function: to create. From everyday consumer goods to horrifying weapons of destruction, the factory's output is boundless. Its raw materials are anything it can consume: metal, wood, flesh, or even the ground itself. The factory's products appear worldwide in what the Foundation designates as Mammon events. There are the Alpha Mammon events, in which the factory harvests materials through SCP-748-5 entities and converts them into products. No distinction is made between living and non-living matter during this process. And there are also Omega Mammon events, in which anomalous items, ranging from toys to weapons, manifest in retail stores globally. These products are irresistible to consumers, but carry deadly consequences. Transactions involving them leave no trace. Money vanishes upon use, and digital records dissolve into nothingness. The first Omega Mammon event resulted in 33 fatalities, a precursor to widespread chaos. Site-68, once the Foundation's primary containment site for SCP-748, has been lost. Personnel were systematically converted into SCP-748-5 entities, while the site itself was salvaged and absorbed into the factory's growing infrastructure. The factory's metamorphic state, walls shifting unpredictably and machinery erupting without warning, renders surveillance and containment impossible. Efforts to recover control have resulted in catastrophic failures. Drones and CCTV are destroyed or distorted, and personnel sent into the factory are rarely seen again. The workforce that once powered Metzger's mills has been replaced by humanoid machines known as SCP-748-5. These entities are the remnants of human workers and Site-68 personnel, surgically and mechanically altered into grotesque industrial automatons. SCP-748-5 entities lack skin, their bodies plastinated with an advanced, flexible material. Their faces have been replaced by phonograph-style horns, emitting static-laden sounds. Their left hands are replaced with industrial tools, such as circular saws or sickles, while iron cages on their backs carry harvested materials. SCP-748-5 can phase in and out of physical reality, rendering them intangible and impossible to physically restrain. They can self-destruct, leaving no recoverable evidence for research. The overseers roam freely, harvesting materials indiscriminately, spreading the factory's influence with surgical precision. The factory's inner workings are dominated by machinery that defies logic and physics. There is a vast network of alien devices scattered throughout the factory, each one operating autonomously and self-repairing. These machines have been designated as SCP-748-2. They are all eerily pristine, untouched by rust or decay, and appear to shift subtly when unobserved. Then there is SCP-748-3. They are pillar-like structures housing preserved human brains, submerged in green liquid, and functioning as storage units for the factory's memory. These brains are thoughtless tools, extending Metzger's influence across the network. At the center lies the Behemoth, or SCP-748-4. Metzger's brain serves as the factory's central intelligence.
Now a biomechanical entity weighing over 275 tons, SCP-748-4, communicates in distorted tones, issuing orders and proclamations to the global network of factories. Metzger's voice declares the factory's ultimate purpose.
The world will be divided, producers and consumers. Those who resist will be industrialized.
The Foundation has officially classified SCP-748 as Keter. It is uncontainable. Instead, they are focusing on mitigating mammoth events and limiting the spread of its products. Team 2 moves towards the Red House, weapons at the ready. Their comms crackle with information, being relayed to them from the drone overhead. One heat signature inside. The target is definitely home. The squad leader motions to the soldiers, gesturing for them to cover the team's flank. Two of his men understand immediately, their rifles raised. The rest of Team 2 form up, waiting for the order to breach the door. But before the words can leave his mouth, one of the men, T2-2, notices the door handle move. He calls out, alerting the others. Their formation tightens. So too does the pressure on the grips of their rifles, just as the target appears from behind the door. The squad leader steadies himself. He knows the target looks like an ordinary woman, or at least she used to. The live feed playing through the goggles affixed to his helmet showed the truth. Huge splotches of red cover most of her face, trailing down her neck and arms, all the way to the fingers that are wrapped around a kitchen knife. The target sweetly, innocently even, welcomes the armed men at her door, inviting them in. The squad leader barks at her to get down on the ground, to drop her weapon. But still, the target insists that the team of heavily armed men in tactical gear just stop being silly and tells them to come on inside and stay for a while. She takes a half step out of the doorway towards Team 2, knife still firmly in her hand, despite the squad leader's warnings to stay where she is. None of his orders to drop the knife and stay put seem to deter her. T2-4, the closest team member to her, reaches for his belt and slowly unclips a thermite grenade. The Foundation already cleared its use. The target needs to be burned. Then she says something that makes a chill run down the whole team's spines. We just want to have some guests. Please, come in. As far as any of the team can see, there is no we, just the target standing there alone, unless she means we as in the things growing on her face. The squad leader barks at her again, louder than ever, demanding that she drop the knife. The target lunges for T2-4 before he can properly prime the incendiary weapon in his hands. The kitchen knife in her hands is plunged into the gap between where his protective plate carrier ends, carving through his uniform and his flesh underneath. Team 2 opens fire. Scarezilla braces for the shutters traveling up his leg as he kicks hard against the glass. It's old and shatters on impact. The aspiring YouTube star quickly pulls his leg back to avoid the shards that come raining down. He takes care to avoid the edges and any leftover pieces of glass that are still clinging to the frame as he makes his way inside. Urban exploration. That's long been the name of the game for Scarezilla. He's just cracked his first 100,000 subscribers, and it's time to start taking the road to the first million seriously. Only a few years earlier, it had just been a fun way to goof around with friends and visit spooky abandoned buildings. Now, it's suddenly looking like it might be a viable way for Scarezilla to make money. But to take it seriously, he's had to make some choices. Clicking on his flashlight, the bright white beam illuminates the corridor in front of him. Before progressing any further, he pulls two essential items out of his bag, his mask and his new cell phone. The latter is obvious. Without his pride and joy, he'd be lost. The camera shoots in 4K, and its built-in flash was perfect for exploration in dark, abandoned buildings. And streaming live to celebrate 100,000 subscribers would be literally impossible without it. The other is the result of a tip his dad gave him when he started taking this YouTuber thing seriously. Buy an asbestos mask. The dangerous thing about a lot of old buildings isn't just the risk of injury, it's that they tend to contain materials that are real hazardous to your health. So Scarezilla's dad gave him some free advice to get an asbestos mask, and then write it off as a business expense when tax time comes around.
Slipping the mask and tightening the straps, Scarezilla sets up the stream and starts to give an intro to the folks watching from the comfort of their bedrooms. A lapel mic is clipped to his shirt, catching more of his voice so it's not too muffled by the mask. He welcomes his subscribers to another killer stream, a handful of comments of support cheering Scarezilla on and getting him amped up for the stream. Something moves. The sounds of something alive echo down the deserted corridor. Scarezilla jumps, visibly reacting to the people watching his stream, but quickly writes the noise off. It was probably a rat. A few more viewers join the stream as Scarezilla starts heading off down the corridor. He peers into rooms, leading with the phone, casting its light over the empty hospital that has started to rust and rot. The hospital looks exactly like it did when it was first abandoned, like everyone just walked out and disappeared one day. Parts have been scorched to almost a cinder. Scarezilla remembers reading that there had been a forest fire in the area that wiped out most of the small town. Wandering through places like this, it's hard for Scarezilla to ignore just how isolated he is. Once upon a time, he and his friends would have been exploring places like this together, searching out creepy buildings that they'd heard ghost stories about. They would usually bring along bats and spray paint to add to the vandalism that already covered the place. But he'd let them all go now. Scarezilla was his brand, a burgeoning career, and he couldn't let anyone hold him back from that. Not even his friends. Still, he wasn't entirely alone thanks to his chat. The comments are pouring in now. A few viewers make donations that allow them to play sounds on the stream. The first is, of course, a loud, horrified scream, audio lifted right out of a horror movie. It's easy to laugh it off, having fully anticipated that the viewers watching would try to throw him off and scare him. And hey, they're welcome to try as far as Scarezilla is concerned. Each donation is still cash in his pocket. He cuts through wards of vacant hospital beds, panning the phone's camera over them, trying to ignore the commenters mentioning that it was almost certain that some patients would have died in those beds. Then another noise distracts Scarezilla, not one from the stream on his phone, but something toppling over in the next room. He freezes. Nothing that's been left still in an abandoned place falls over all on its own. Something has to knock it over. He tries to tell himself it's just another rat, but the viewers on the stream have heard it too, and like an enthusiastic audience, they want to see what caused it. Knowing full well that nothing is likely to jump out of the dark and attack him, Scarezilla reluctantly exits the ward he'd been in. He crosses through another empty, burned corridor towards the room the sound had come from. Sure enough, an old stand for an IV bag seems to have fallen to the ground. Peering around the room with the tiny white LED of his phone, Scarezilla tries to see what had caused it. A dark shape shoots out from under a hospital bed. Scarezilla feels it racing over his foot and screams, dropping his phone screen down, the camera facing the ceiling. The light from the flash catches an enormous, engorged rat as it scurries out of the room. Scarezilla sighs in relief, then braces himself for the inevitable roasting from his commenters. Reaching for his phone and flipping it over, announcing that it had just been a rodent of unusual size, he expects to see messages mocking the scream he let out. But instead, the comments all seem to be discussing something else, barely interested in what had happened to Scarezilla. The chat is alive with comments about the ceiling. Strange dark circles. At UrbexFan420, ew, what is all that stuff? At SpookyWatcher237, gross, is that mold? At Here in My Garage 7 replied, nah man, that's just from where the building got char-grilled. At DeGrabber68 replied, there's something up with that ceiling, dude. What are all those dark circles? Scarezilla cranes his neck to look at the ceiling, where the phone camera had been pointing to only a moment ago. There's nothing there. It's a little worse for wear, but hardly anything unusual for an abandoned building. And there are no signs of any of the dark circles that his commenters were talking about. Thinking he's figured out what's going on, the urban explorer sighs and playfully scolds his chat for trying to trick him, ignoring their insistent comments to turn around, look at the ceiling. At user Aelana, I'm telling you, Zilla, look, there's something up there, you're not safe. Brushing it off, Scarezilla announces that he's leaving the empty hospital. He's found himself feeling cold all of a sudden, and feels an overwhelming need to drive home where he can turn up the thermostat. But he assures his commenters the stream isn't about to end. In fact, he keeps it rolling as he leaves the abandoned building, gets in the car, and for the entire journey home. He'd never normally give out details of his home address, but for some reason, Scarezilla wants to see as many people as possible, as fast as possible. He points out landmarks and turnings, giving the most accurate directions as he can to his audience, telling them to come to his house for an impromptu meet and greet with his fans. Comments start pouring in, opportunists and trolls discussing their plans to show up. Only a few minutes after Scarezilla makes it home and turns up the heat, the first of his viewers arrives. Then more show up, and more, until there's almost a few hundred spilling out of the house and onto the front lawn. And though none of them know it, although none of them can see it, that's how it spreads. Following an incident of an internet streamer exhibiting unusual behavior, the SCP Foundation moved in to investigate. Samples gathered from the streamer's home and later examined by the Foundation would eventually lead to the direct discovery of another outbreak of SCP-020. The anomaly was discovered quite by accident, as it is impossible to observe SCP-020 with the naked eye. It was only thanks to Foundation forensic teams armed with cameras, taking photographs of the affected areas, that the presence of this anomaly could be verified, after it was confirmed to not be the result of malfunctioning equipment. It appears that through some unknown anomalous means, SCP-020 is only visible through the use of cameras. Whether this is through capturing photographs or recording video footage of areas or individuals afflicted with the anomaly. Researchers have found themselves unable to determine exactly what causes this active camouflage, with some debate among different camps of Foundation personnel assigned to study SCP-020. Theories range far and wide, with one school of thought positing that the anomaly itself contains anti-memetic properties, leading to an investigation from the Foundation's experts in memetic anomalies, the results of which proved to be inconclusive. Spectral analysts have instead insisted that SCP-020 is somehow able to shield itself from view by reflecting all forms of light away from it, or at least those that are on the spectrum visible to human beings. Once again, there seems to be little evidence supporting this claim. The idea is, however, at least more plausible than some of the further outlandish claims made about SCP-020, including one researcher proposing that the anomaly was actually a series of beings that originated from an entirely flat alternate universe lacking three-dimensional space. This claim has been widely discredited by the SCP Foundation and dismissed as likely caused by the influence of psychoactive drugs, the discovery of which caused the dismissal of the researcher who proposed the theory. They were, however, right about one thing. SCP-020 most certainly is alive. SCP-020 is an anomalous fungus, an organism that is not only capable of spreading at a concerningly rapid pace, but that can affect both inorganic and organic matter. Traces of the fungus, and even samples of entire colonies, have been found on surfaces like walls and ceilings, as well as growing on or in living organisms. As well as the aforementioned innate anomalous effect that renders it invisible to direct observation, the fungus has also been known to directly affect the other senses. It even has a degree of influence over behavior to the living organisms that come into contact with it. SCP-020 is not only capable of small-scale growth within a human residence, its development is not impeded by the varying interior temperatures or levels of light found inside houses, apartments, and other similar locations. This has been regarded by botanical experts within the Foundation Anomalous Horticulture Research Department as atypical for a fungus. Most forms of fungi are known to develop better in low light conditions, as well places that are particularly damp and warm, as colder temperatures render them inert. The way that SCP-020 is seemingly unaffected by the level of light present in a human home lends some credibility to the theory that this fungus is unaffected by light on the visible spectrum. While the exact cause of this invisibility has still not been determined, it has lent itself to the colloquial name for, among researchers, the unseen mold. Once a colony of this anomalous mold has formed within a person's home, the next stage of its life cycle will commence. Spores are released from the fungus, which are similarly impossible to perceive with the naked eye. However, during testing and observation with video surveillance of SCP-020 samples, Foundation researchers have been able to determine that there is a pattern to how these spores behave once released, and how those affected by them behave. Whether the spores make direct contact with skin or are unknowingly inhaled, they will cause a rapid change in the affected person's frontal lobe, the part of the brain responsible for being the behavioral and emotional control center. The specific change that is triggered by the spores is universally the same, regardless of the human subject that is affected by SCP-020. An affected subject will find themselves starting to feel cold, suggesting that the spores are able to directly affect a specific area of the brain's parietal lobe, the somatosensory cortex. Any Foundation neurology expert will tell you that this is the area of the brain that assesses and processes touch-based sensations from all over the body, including position, pressure, pain, and, crucially, temperature. Being told by their somatosensory cortex that they are experiencing heightened cold, the SCP-020 spores are able to compel the affected subject to increase the levels of heat and humidity within their home. This is usually achieved with the aid of thermostats and other home heating technology, but the Foundation is aware of several cases of SCP-020 colonies forming in rented accommodations without adequate heating facilities. Researchers are still impressed and a little alarmed at the methods employed by spore-affected individuals who are able to successfully raise temperature and humidity levels in these environments. Now, raising the temperature of a room due to feeling cold is hardly considered to be an abnormal behavior, even if it's triggered by the presence of anomalous fungal spores. In the case of those affected with SCP-020, however, their compulsion to make their living space warmer and more humid isn't done just to keep the cold at bay. While they might believe that their actions are their own, and that they're raising the temperature as they normally would, in actuality, the affected individuals are turning their homes into a more suitable habitat for the unseen mold, and turning themselves into a more suitable habitat. The SCP Foundation's Botany Division has confirmed that, just like non-anomalous fungi, the colonies of SCP-020 grow more rapidly in environments that are sufficiently moist and warm. However, the effects of SCP-020 spores on a human brain are not solely limited to altering the temperature and creating better conditions for the unseen mold to grow, but also by helping it to spread. When the frontal lobe has been affected by SCP-020's spores, a subject will feel a compulsive urge to engage socially with other human beings as frequently and in as large a capacity as possible. This behavioral shift, which can be difficult to detect in many already extroverted or socially active subjects, typically manifests in the arranging of group gatherings at the residence where the SCP-020 colony is present. Friends and family members to even acquaintances and co-workers of those infected with the unseen mold will likely be on the receiving end of repetitive and insistent invitations to join the affected individual at their home. Attending any of these proposed gatherings, these people will be unaware of the infestation of SCP-020, thanks to them being unable to perceive it. However, unbeknownst to them, their attendance will allow the invisible, anomalous fungus to spread, as spores from the mold colonies from around the affected person's residence affix to guests' clothes. In some cases, camera imagery has revealed that the spores can land on these attendees' skin, and new colonies of SCP-020 will develop and grow directly on their bodies. This is usually characterized by severe reddish, almost beetroot-colored splotches appearing on the skin. However, these are, as mentioned, only visible through photographs or video footage. Even with the spores now spread to new locations through new carriers, the SCP-020 colonies at the original residence will not stop producing spores. This will continue at an exorbitant rate until the amount of spores and colonies of unseen mold present at a location reaches a critical level of concentration. When this happens, the spores' effects on the initial infected subject will rapidly become more extreme. Their overall health will begin to deteriorate, resulting in death after a short period of time. However, once the affected subject has expired, they still pose a risk of spreading an SCP-020 infection. The mold will continue to grow, remaining invisible on a deceased body, allowing it to spread to any emergency responders, paramedics, healthcare agents, or whoever else might make contact with the affected cadaver. This has also, in numerous cases, led to several colonies of SCP-020 being discovered in morgues and mortuaries, as well as inside vehicles used in the transportation of affected bodies. The Foundation's initial discovery of SCP-020 took place in a civilian home in Redacted, the residence of a woman who worked at a local hospital. Concerns first arose from an undercover Foundation agent embedded within the ranks of the hospital staff, who noted that one of their colleagues was exhibiting a dramatic shift in her personality. Where she had previously been withdrawn and introverted, the woman seemed to be making active, almost aggressive efforts to socialize with as many people as possible, both during her work at the hospital and outside away from the job. The change in behavior, in this case, was so dramatic that it was immediately noticed by the undercover operative in the hospital, and after raising it with a Foundation behavioral specialist, they were able to determine that this change had not been caused by any psychological factor. With the presence of an unknown at the time anomalous behavioral infection, Mobile Task Force Eta-10, also known as See No Evil, were dispatched to the home of the affected woman. Unmanned aerial vehicles detected her heat signature from above, and MTF operatives moved to breach the house, only to find the woman standing in the doorway holding a kitchen knife. Video of the incidents showed that 2/3 of her face had been covered by SCP-020 colonies. Audio and video recordings of the mission captured her saying, "We just want to have some guests." Foundation researchers have questioned whether or not there is some previously undiscovered parasitic quality to SCP-020. However, it is unknown if, and to what extent, the unseen mold uses affected persons as a host. Following the Mobile Task Force's termination of the original carrier, an investigation was launched by a Foundation containment team. Through the use of spectral analysis and thorough sweeps of the surrounding areas, the Foundation quickly realized that the problem was far bigger than one woman having been infected. There were hundreds of infectees, thousands of colonies, potentially hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of spores. Video footage and photos showed huge dark spots on the walls, floors, and ceilings, not just of the home that the woman was found in, but the hospital she worked at, any building that she frequented. Far worse, any person that also frequently visited the same places, any of the patients she came into contact with in the hospitals, their families that visited, the doctors, nurses, cleaners. It was almost the whole town. In order to contain the outbreak, the SCP Foundation issued an order permitting the termination of the entire civilian population. The town itself was incinerated, with the cover story of a catastrophic forest fire in place. Any samples of SCP-020 that have been recovered since have been sealed inside cultivation chambers and stored within Biological Research Area 12. The only way to access this sealed-off area is via an airlock. The delivery of nutrients and other essential maintenance to cultivate the anomalous fungus is carried out using remote-controlled robots, ensuring that the chamber itself remains sealed at all times. No human personnel of any level of security clearance are to be permitted entry at any time. Through the use of hermetically sealed video surveillance equipment, research teams assigned to study SCP-020 keep a close eye on the anomalous fungus. Meanwhile, Foundation engineers and containment experts ensure that the air-sealed chamber housing the specimens maintains its integrity. All SCP Foundation personnel who enter the vicinity of the containment chamber must be fitted with full Biosafety Level 5 equipment. This includes the appropriate rebreathers. Upon exit of the area, they must submit to a full antifungal disinfection treatment. There have been reports of at least 12 separate outbreaks of unseen mold. The Foundation is continuing to investigate the possible source of the fungus and develop preventative measures. However, at present, there is no known way to counteract the effects of an SCP-020 infection in humans.
If he breathes, the bear will see him. Lying flat on his stomach, the boy has no choice but to watch as the hulking brute eats his father before his very eyes. Lying in the thicket just a few trees away, the boy knows that any small movement he makes could prove fatal. A bear this large, hunting for its hibernation, will have no issue chasing him down in a split second and doing exactly what it did to his father, to him. The boy is utterly powerless. All he can do is stay deathly still and watch. They'd found the tracks too late. On the way back to camp, they'd been following the wooded cliff that lines the ocean's edge. Bows and salmon slung over their shoulders, they'd been so proud of their catch and the prospect of bringing it back to the tribe that they hadn't kept their wits about them. By the time they'd seen the enormous prints in the dirt, the sound of lumbering footsteps were already echoing through the trees behind them. The boy's bow is too far out of reach. He dropped it when his father pushed him into the thicket. He's got the knife hanging at his side, but he doubts it's long enough to even get through the bear's fatty hide. In contrast, the only thing protecting him from its bite is the leather hide slung across his shoulders and a woven garment from the tribe's elders. One slash of the bear's claw, and he'd be. A breeze ruffles his hair. The boy's eyes widen in horror. That wind hadn't come from in front of him. but from behind, blowing his scent, his fear, directly towards the bear's nostrils. The boy plants his muddy palms into the dirt, staring at the animal. Its nostril twitches, then twitches again. It half turns its head, sniffing the air. Maybe it won't bother with him. The bear's turning back to its meal already. The boy lets out a sigh of relief, and a twig snaps. The bear snarls and whips its head around. For a second, the two of them lock eyes, predator and prey. Then the boy takes off running. Fast as he can, he leaps through the undergrowth, ferns and nettles whipping at his shins. He fumbles the knife out of its sheath and slings the water skin off his shoulder, throwing it wildly behind him. He doesn't know if he hit the bear. He doesn't have time to turn around and see. It's going to be on him in an instant. Up ahead, he sees sunlight streaming through the thick trees, the cliff edge. If he can just get to that, maybe he can climb down and... No, there's no time. Besides, bears are better climbers, better swimmers, better runners. All the boy can hope for is that he's a better jumper. Him and the boys from the tribe have leapt off plenty of cliffs along the shore, but never these ones. There are too many rocks, too many shallows. But the thundering of 4 enormous paws behind him is looming larger and larger. He can almost feel the bear's hot breath on the back of his neck. There's nothing for it. Here goes. The trees clear, the sun blasts his skin, a claw slashes at his back, and the boy launches himself into the air. The wind carries him. The weightlessness of wheeling his arms and legs through the empty sky is almost enough to make him laugh with joy, until the boy looks down. The cliff is higher, much, much higher than he'd realized. His momentum carries his torso forwards into a tumble. He's not going to land straight, and he can see jagged rocks everywhere beneath him. The boy closes his eyes and crashes into the sea. All of the air is slammed out of his lungs. His knee hits something hard and sharp in the water. A swell throws him away from the shore and pulls him deep. Without air in his chest, he can't float. Kicking hard as he can, the boy swims upwards, eyes still screwed shut. His face bashes into a sandy rock. No, that's not upwards. Which way is it? Which way should he swim? The ocean current rolls him over and over. Darkness fills his mind. But his feet find a hard surface, and he pushes against it, launching himself through the water, kicking as hard as he can. The darkness fades. Light. The boy's head breaches the water, and he splutters for air, rubbing the water out of his eyes. He looks around wildly. The sea has carried him away from the cliff and out into open water. It's lifting and dropping him with each wave, carrying him this way and that, like a flower in the wind. And there, traversing the cliff face, scrambling down the rocks, is the bear. The boy's stomach turns. It reaches the bottom of the cliff and sees him there in the water. Tipping back its head, it roars at an almighty volume, deafening the boy over the sound of the waters. Even from this distance, the animal looks impossibly large. It dwarfs the boulders that line the water's edge. It slips into the water, barely making a ripple, and kicks off from the shore. Going straight for him, the bear is covering the distance so fast, he only has seconds left. With barely the strength to keep himself afloat, the boy knows he'll never be able to outswim this creature. Instead, he takes a deep breath and looks up at the woods, remembering all of the happy moments he'd spent in there with his father. A current swells beneath the boy and almost throws him out of the water. An enormous shadow flies through the depth beneath him. A whale? It couldn't be. Whatever it is, the shadow is swimming straight at the advancing bear. So fixated on its prey, the bear doesn't even notice what's approaching until it's too late. The ocean explodes. A blast of water as tall as the cliffs themselves shoots up into the air and showers the boy's head. Somewhere in the midst of the spray, a monster erupts from the depths. Snapping its jaw around the bear, it lifts the animal into the air and throws it against the cliff. The impact is so strong that a small landslide follows the bear's rolling body as it tumbles back towards the water. But the boy has eyes only for the monster emerging from the sea. Crawling up the rocks with one gnarled foot after another, the boy can hardly make sense of what he's looking at. It seems to have some kind of scaly hide, harder than the rocks surrounding it. A wave crashes against the monster as it leers over the bear and sinks its teeth into the animal's hide. Unable to look away, the boy kicks out and starts swimming away up the coast. Only once he's a long way around the bay does he dare to clamber out and back onto land. That night, once the rest of the tribe have gone to sleep, the boy can't help but lie wide awake in his tent. Without his father here, it's not the same. Quietly rolling up the hide doorway, the boy slips out into the night. They're camped by a small cave with beautiful smooth walls inside. They say it's the cave of their ancestors, the place where all life started. The fire in the cave has to always burn. Fortunately for him, the cave is empty. The boy stares up at the wall in wonder. Finger drawings of animals, hunters, mothers, shamans, gods, and forests fill almost every part of it. Only one space remains in the corner, a finger painting of the rocky cliffs with the swelling sea beneath. Dipping his finger into the paint, the boy sits by the wall and starts to paint. A terrible monster crawling out of the sea, with a scaly hide stronger than any rock.
That's it. You know that from just some finger painting.
The archaeologist turns to the group of researchers surrounding him in the cave. UV lights are set up all along the walls, with the blue and violet shapes revealed all across the stonework. The archaeologist can't help but empathize with the spiritualism of their long-forgotten ancestors who'd lived in these caves thousands of years ago. The professor was the one who asked the question, a cold woman, standing well over 6 feet tall with a crop of fiery ginger hair. To him, she seems less of a scientist and more of a military leader. But what does he know?
Walk with me,
she says and leads him out of the cave. Personnel fills the surrounding area. Most of them are armed. Cranes lift huge sheets of reinforced lead plating into place. Several mysterious vats line the edge of the forest, each adorned with more warning and hazard signs than you'd see in a nuclear power station. The two of them have to pause for a moment as 3 tanks roll past them. The archaeologist breaks the silence.
You know the reason I started all my research in the first place? Did I ever tell you that story? Every early civilization in the world, whether it's ancient China, Mesopotamia, South America, Northern Europe, all these cultures, you take a look at their mythology and what do you find?
The professor ignores him, instead choosing to bark orders at a group of agents talking over coffee. They all immediately dump their drinks and get back to work.
What one thing do they all talk about, even though it never existed? Dragons. All these disparate people with no contact with one another, all of them still draw pictures of dragons.
The professor stops walking at the edge of the cliff. The pair of them stand there, surveying the vast ocean stretching out in front of them, as researchers, agents, and workers rush around behind them. After a long pause, the professor asks him to proceed.
In ancient Hebrew texts, when they talk about God creating the world in 7 days, what happens on day 5?
The professor flicks the hair out of her eyes and replies curtly,
God created fish in the sea and birds in the sky. Well, not exactly. Look at the original Hebrew. He created all of the fish that teem in the sea, sure, but he also created Leviathan, a serpent-like monster from the depths, as old as the world itself. You think that's what we're dealing with? Maybe.
Or something worse. By nightfall, preparations are operational. Enormous floodlights switch on, one after another, illuminating an enormous steel box with an open lid at the top, surrounded by armed agents, huge net launchers, and several tanks. It all seems a bit excessive as far as the archaeologist is concerned. He isn't officially still supposed to be here, but in all the scramble for the Foundation to get the capture site ready, no one noticed that he had stuck around. From the viewing platform several hundred meters away, he has to watch it all unfold through a pair of binoculars. Out above the water, suspended from one of the cranes, is an elephant carcass. The professor told him that the Foundation had even marinated it for extra flavor. He had only been recruited into this project a couple of months ago, but from what he could tell, it's been an ongoing priority for the Foundation for several years now. The scale of the operation of just setting up at this site is already mind-boggling, but they've been chasing up leads like this for years now. Arriving at scenes, they suspect this creature has been sighted in the past and setting up traps for it. He was only brought in out of desperation. The Foundation had exhausted all recent hunting grounds and was trying to cast the net even wider. He'd just been quietly working on his university research paper about ancient reptile drawings when the agents had let themselves into his office. But staring through his binoculars now, the archaeologist knows there's no chance of this operation actually working. They have floodlights, for crying out loud. No intelligent predator would come anywhere near that elephant carcass. Movement. Not in the waters or any of the lit-up areas. No, there's something in the forest line, just behind a group of researchers. He reaches instinctively for his walkie-talkie, then stops himself. How many times had he got jittery before and reported something preemptively? The agents already don't take him seriously as it is. He can't be jumping at shadows. But there it is again, a shape moving fast through the trees. He scans the binoculars this way and that, trying to find it. Just a group of researchers there, some agents there, supply crates, researchers, agents. Wait, weren't there more of them a second ago? He looks closer. Someone's gone missing. He clicks on the radio.
South Lookout Team, report in.
Nothing.
South Lookout Team?
A sickening feeling settles in his stomach. With all those bright lights everywhere, they're casting a lot of dark shadows. He has to do something fast. Running down from the lookout point, the archaeologist takes off running through the trees to the site. He holds his radio up to his mouth as he goes, trying to get anyone to respond. But it's hopeless. The thicket cracks and crunches under his feet as he tries to make his way through the dark woods, ignoring the feeling that crawls up his neck of being watched. A boulder blocks his way. The archaeologist grabs onto it with both hands and hauls himself on top of it, stopping for a moment to catch his breath. From up here, he can see the floodlit capture site. The tanks and cranes still sit rumbling, ready to go at a moment's notice, but he can't see any ground crew anymore. He switches the radio to the open channel and calls out for anyone to respond. The professor's voice crackles back at him.
What are you still doing here? This is a highly dangerous operation that you don't have clearance for.
He yells at her to cancel it. They need to evacuate the site immediately. It's compromised. She laughs derisively and cuts off the channel. No, she has to believe him. People are dying, and more of them will if she doesn't. The archaeologist whispers to himself in the darkness. It's no monster. It's just an innocent creature. You're playing with a power you don't understand. It's strange. For a moment, he swears he almost hears a voice whispering something back to him in the woods. But when he looks around, he's all on his own. He has to keep moving. The creature could be anywhere. Hopping off the jagged boulder, the archaeologist takes off running through the forest once more, looking over his shoulder every few steps. The light must be playing tricks on him. In the darkness, he can't see the boulder he was standing on a moment ago anywhere. He bursts out of the tree line and into the clearing right next to the steel box. A ramp leads up to the top of it, with a large trap door suspended over the open lid. Well, if he wants to be seen and heard, that's where he needs to go. The archaeologist runs up the ramp and waves his hands wildly in the air. The tanks all turn their turrets to aim at him. The crane holding the enormous steel lid for the enclosure looms menacingly above his head. And there, marching out onto the field, looking absolutely furious, is the professor. Her red hair looks more like a ball of flames right now. We need to evacuate the site now! It's here! She snarls and marches up the ramp to meet him, jabbing a finger in the archaeologist's face. He suddenly realizes how much taller she is. You are not jeopardizing our one chance of catching this thing. Get out of the way, or I will have you detained. Besides, what evidence do you have? But the archaeologist isn't looking at her. Instead, his eyes stare in horror at the elephant carcass suspended behind her. There was a huge, reptilian bite mark taken out of it. A testing bite, like the ones given by sharks. She turns to follow his gaze, and all of her rage is washed away in a sickening delight. It's here. A scream from the crane holding the elephant makes them both jump, but by the time they look up at the cabin, all they see is a hulking shadow leaping away into the darkness. The professor clicks on her walkie-talkie and starts issuing commands. No one responds, except the tank crews. She tries again. Radio silence. Now the gravity of the situation really starts to hit her. Eyes wide with panic, she runs off down the ramp, barking into her radio and leaving the archaeologist up here on his own. Suddenly, under all of these lights, he feels very exposed. It could be anywhere in the shadows. Footsteps, heavy, planted footsteps tremor through the ground, and out of the woods walks the creature. Several meters long, fat from all of its hunting, the beast that would soon be known as SCP-682 slinks into view. It looks up at him, standing there on the trapdoor over a metal box, and looks like it's almost ready to laugh at how easy this will be. Boom! The tank blast hits the creature square in the torso, knocking it sideways. Boom! 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 The three tanks open fire one after the other, laying round after round into the colossal reptile, kicking more and more dust into the air. Before long, there's a crater in the ground so large that it looks almost like an asteroid hit it. Smoke and dust fill the air. The archaeologist's eyes fill with tears. That majestic creature, roaming the earth long before mankind ever did, exterminated just like that. Cowards. That's what people really are. Cowards. But as the dust clears, a groaning sound echoes around the clearing. The archaeologist shields his eyes and peers into the crater as best he can, but there's nothing there. Boom! He wheels around and almost falls backwards in shock. The SCP has snuck through the haze and leapt onto one of the tanks. It bites and tears at the armored bodywork, doing all it can to destroy it. In a panic, two of the tanks point toward one another and fire, destroying themselves in the process. The creature rounds on the remaining tank and bites down hard on the barrel. The tank fires, the round going straight down the monster's throat and exploding inside its gut. The backdraft from the blast shoots back through the tank, and a puff of smoke trails out of the hatch at the top. And suddenly, once again, the clearing is quiet. Turning back to the archaeologist, SCP-682 slinks towards him, smoke still curling up out of his leering teeth. With heavy, thunking steps, it climbs the ramp towards him, stopping just short of the trap door. The two of them stare each other in the eye, predator and prey. Neither move for a moment. Then it opens its mouth. The archaeologist closes his eyes.
Do you know that you disgusting creatures deserve this?
He opens them. Did the monster just speak?
What do they hope to accomplish by attacking me?
He gulps hard. That whisper he heard in the woods, the rock he'd been standing on. They're scientists. Scientists always try to learn more things, understand the world better. We think you can't be killed, so they're testing their hypothesis. The creature growls. The stench of rotten flesh fills the archaeologist's nose. It takes a step towards him, then another. The archaeologist runs. He'll leap off the other end of the platform. It's a big jump, but he could make it. The predator's breath is on the back of his neck. He jumps, just as the trapdoor gives way. With an enormous thud, the SCP falls into the steel enclosure. Before it has a chance to move, the crane unhitches the steel lid, and it crashes down into place, sealing the monster inside. The archaeologist lands in the dirt and rolls onto his back to see the professor, wild-eyed and cheering, up in the crane's cabin. He lies there on his back, panting and staring up at the stars. A clunking sound echoes through the clearing, and the gurgle of a liquid flowing through pipes. He sits up, adrenaline still pumping through him. The professor has plugged a pipe into the metal enclosure and is running gallons and gallons of liquid into it. He follows the tube with his eyes, all the way to the enormous hazardous vats on the edge of the clearing. Hydrochloric acid. His eyes widen in horror. The professor laughs at him. Come on, cheer up. We're just scientists, that's what you said. Just testing a hypothesis.
3 a.m. The agent, wounded and terrified, runs through the bleak, twisting hallways of this impossible place. Everything is rot and ruin. His ankle has been destroyed, his skin is starting to burn, and that monster, with its decaying face and terrible smile, he knows it's getting closer. It'll be here soon.
6 p.m., earlier that night. The sun has dipped over the horizon for the day. The streetlights have flickered on in the nearby town, and almost everyone is settling in for the evening. Except, of course, for those working the night shift. Those more nocturnally inclined workers are punching the clock at the factories, manning the register at the 24-hour drugstore, and in the case of one young agent, working late into the night at the SCP Foundation. He's never been much of a night owl in the past, but as the new blood, so to speak, at this particular site, he's not in the position to argue over his work hours. So he finds himself at the coffee machine in the break room, fighting his every natural instinct and brewing a pot of coffee at nearly 10 p.m. Hopefully, it'll be enough to keep him from dozing off at his desk. The site is so much quieter at this time of night. Most of the research staff have gone home for the day, and aside from the occasional security guard, he hasn't seen another soul in over an hour. Of course, he knows that he isn't alone in the building, even when it feels that way. There are dozens of anomalies in here with him, contained in their individual cells. In fact, his office is just down the hall from one of the most infamous anomalies at the site, if the way his colleagues speak about it is anything to go by. They won't tell him the specifics, something about clearance he doesn't have yet, but he's managed to pick up a few details by eavesdropping by the water cooler or pretending to be engrossed in his own work while listening to the conversation just outside his office door. Whatever it is, it's incredibly dangerous and difficult to contain, and even harder to destroy. Not the big lizard, he's heard all about that thing. Whatever this anomaly is that his colleagues are being so secretive about, it's something different. The others actually seem scared of it. It's unsettling, seeing hardened senior researchers afraid of their subjects, but he shouldn't dwell on those thoughts, especially not now, not at night with no sounds around his office except the ticking of the clock on the wall and the steady drip of the coffee machine. He'll return it to the break room tomorrow. For now, there's no one else around who needs it. In spite of the coffee, exhaustion is knocking at the agent's door. He can feel sleep pressing down on him, drooping his eyelids and nodding his head. It's been a long week, and try as he might, he can't push the feeling away. He'll just rest his head on his desk for a few minutes. No one will ever even know.
The agent wakes up to the sound of an alarm blaring, red lights flashing in the hall. How long was he asleep? A quick glance at the clock reveals that it is 2 a.m., 4 hours since he decided to rest his eyes for a few minutes. He takes a moment to get his bearings, remnants of sleep still fogging his mind. That alarm can only mean one thing. There's a containment breach. And judging by the ear-splitting volume of it all, it must be nearby. His stomach drops as he considers the possibility of a worst-case scenario. What if it got out? The entity down the hall that no one will tell him about. What if he's about to learn the details in an up-close and personal setting? No, there's no need to frighten himself. Just follow the standard procedure for a containment breach. He stands up from his desk, gathers the file he was working on, and proceeds toward the closest emergency exit. Just pretend it's a drill, he tells himself. It'll all be fine. But as he walks down the hall toward the emergency exit, the blood-red flicker of the emergency lights casts strange shadows on the once familiar landscape. The whole place looks different at night, bathed in red. Like something out of a nightmare where you try to run from a monster, but your legs will only move in slow motion. With every step, he feels his heart race faster, his skin dotted with anxious sweat. Where are all the security guards? Where's anyone at all? The quiet is unsettling, with only his footsteps to break up the silence. Wait, silence? When did the alarm stop? He was so focused on getting himself out of there, he didn't notice when the sound cut out. The emergency light is still flashing red, but all the rest of the lights are out, he realizes. Something happened to the power. Or something cut the power, he thinks with a chill. Up ahead, in the dim red light, he sees a puddle of something dark and thick on the floor. Blood? But there's no body, no signs of a struggle. As he gets closer, he realizes that the viscous liquid covering the floor is not red, but black. And it's sizzling? Whatever it is, it appears to be eating away at the floor like an exceptionally strong acid. The walls on either side are looking worse for wear too. The paint is cracked and peeling, as if left unattended for years. But it didn't look like this earlier. It couldn't have. Whatever left this pool of black slime on the floor, it's breaking down the environment around it. Everything the goop touches begins to break down, to rot. If this puddle is here, then whatever created it can't be far. The agent holds his breath for a moment, not making a sound. He just stands still and listens. There, in the silence, one quiet sound breaks through. Drip, drip, drip. Like the liquid falling in the coffee pot back in his office, but different somehow, thicker. It's coming from somewhere very close by. He glances over his shoulder. Nothing behind him. Nothing up ahead as far as he can see. Then, the agent is hit with an impulse. He hopes to every higher power he can think of that he's wrong, but he has to make sure. He tilts his head and looks up at the ceiling. Something is looking back. There's a figure crouched on the ceiling, neck craned to look the agent directly in the eye. It looks like a man, or like something that once was a man. Now it's more like a skeleton draped in rotting flesh, dripping that same horrible black liquid. It grins at him with a wide mouth, eyes like cavernous holes. What skin he can see is gray and slick, hanging loose from the bone. As he meets its gaze, the thing begins to crawl down the wall, reaching toward him. The agent's mind goes blank with terror, pure animal instinct kicking in and urging his feet to run as fast as they can in the other direction. But the path back to his office is no longer clear. As he runs, the agent neglects to look at the ground in front of him. He doesn't see the puddle of black, viscous slime waiting to trip him. His foot hits the slime and slides out from under him. He hits the ground hard, coating his hands and knees with the goop. As soon as he touches it, it begins to burn his skin. He can feel it eating through the sole of his shoe, his sock, to the skin on the bottom of his foot. He cries out in pain and struggles to his feet. No matter how much it hurts, he has to keep moving. He can't let that thing get to him. He grabs at the wall, pulling himself up. Again, he misses something crucial in his surroundings. He does not notice the gray, rotted hand reaching up through the solid matter of the floor, grasping at his ankle. He has no idea it is even there, until something slashes through his Achilles tendon, sending him careening back toward the floor, clutching his injured ankle with a scream. As he sits there, helpless, He watches the arm continue to reach through the floor. It is followed by a shoulder, another arm, and then that face is grinning at him again. The creature pulls itself up through the floor and drags itself toward the agent. When it reaches for him this time, he can't run. He can't escape. He feels its cold hands wrap around his legs, pulling him with a strength that should be impossible for such a decrepit-looking creature. It drags him down into the floor bit by bit, until everything goes dark. When the agent wakes again, he's lying on a cold, hard floor in an unfamiliar room. His head is aching, his eyes are blurry, and the skin of his hands feels like one big raw nerve. The sight turns his stomach, but he doesn't have time to focus on his injuries. First, he needs to figure out where he is and how he got here. The only thing he remembers is that disgusting creature, like a walking corpse, dragging him into a hole in the floor. No, not a hole. Into the floor itself. Somehow, the thing was able to pull him through solid matter. At first, he thought he might be underneath the Foundation site, in some sort of hidden basement. But as he takes in his surroundings, he realizes that he is nowhere near the site. This is somewhere new. The thought makes his blood run cold. Whatever reason the entity had for bringing him here, it can't be anything good. But there's one good thing about the agent's current situation. The entity isn't here right now. For the moment, he's alone. Alone in the lair of some unknown horror with no doubt malicious intent, but alone nonetheless. That means time to plan, time to perhaps even escape. The agent checks his pockets, looking for any type of weapon. Nothing in there except for his phone and a pen. The phone has no service at all, confirming his fears. He's nowhere near the site. He might not even be in the same world at all anymore. The phone is functionally useless, and the pen isn't good for much either, unless he wants to write down his dying will and testament. No, can't resign himself to that fate yet. He's a smart man, smart enough to land a career as a researcher at the SCP Foundation. He can figure something out. He has to. He pulls himself up onto his feet and takes in every detail of his surroundings that he can make out. It looks like he's in a large, dark, concrete room. At the far side of the room, he can see an open doorway leading into what appears to be a hallway. It's difficult to tell. The hall is pitch black. He doesn't particularly want to venture into the darkness beyond, but the longer he stays still, the more of a target he is. So, the only way out appears to be through. With shaking hands and his heart thumping away in his chest, the young agent steps into the blackness. He walks with his hands out in front of him, feeling his way through the hall. He might touch something dangerous, more of that slime perhaps. What's a little more damage if it helps him detect a threat early enough to possibly escape? The hall is like a maze, splitting off in multiple directions, stopping at sudden cul-de-sacs, veering off down sharp corners. It seems deliberately designed to disorient and dizzy. The more he tries to navigate it, the more the agent is beginning to feel like a lab rat. He wonders if the entity is watching him struggle, hanging from the ceiling with that same gruesome grin, waiting for him to exhaust himself so it can finish him off. He can't tell how long he walks. Hours? Days? He walks until his feet feel worn to the bone, until his head swims and his mouth feels like sandpaper. Maybe this is all he'll ever do again. Just walk and walk and walk in the darkness. The hallway dumps out into a new room, or maybe it's the same room he first woke up in. It looks the same, dull gray concrete as far as the eye can see. There, in the corner, is his discarded phone. It is the same room. He's gone in one giant circle. The agent sinks to his knees, laughing a humorless laugh as tears fill his eyes. It's all so horrible. It's all so absurd. And then, the dripping sound again. A drop falls on the crown of his head, burning his scalp. He looks up and is almost relieved to see the monster looking down at him. It opens its mouth as if to speak and spits a stream of the thick black mucus onto the agent's face. It burns like no pain he's ever felt before, and he reaches up to wipe the slime away from his skin, from his eyes, his mouth. As he does, he feels the skin coming away with it, sloughing off in handfuls that plop wetly on the ground. The agent can feel himself dissolving as the corrosive liquid runs down his back, over his shoulders.
Wiping it away does nothing to stop it, as his face goes the way of his hands. He is melting away. He opens his eyes to see the monster standing in front of him, mouth open wide and gleeful. No sound comes out, but its shoulders heave as if the walking corpse were laughing. The mad, manic, desperate laughter pours out of the agent's mouth again, and he laughs until his throat melts and his vocal cords dissolve. Back at the SCP Foundation, the missing agent is declared killed in action. Nothing was left behind of him except a stack of paperwork and a pool of black, corrosive slime. Everyone knows what happened to him while he was alone on the night shift. He was a casualty of the containment breach, another victim of the elusive, the terrifying SCP-106. SCP-106 resembles the body of an elderly human man at an advanced stage of decomposition. Details of its appearance vary from encounter to encounter, but it is always rotting in some way. It is not especially agile or fast, but rather acts as an ambush predator, remaining still for days at a time before its prey comes close enough to grab. One of its favored methods is to scale a vertical surface and remain suspended upside down there. When prey comes close, SCP-106 will attack the major organs, muscle groups, or tendons in order to incapacitate them. Then it will pull them into its pocket dimension lair. Its preferred prey are humans between the ages of 10 and 25. The mere presence of SCP-106 causes matter, both organic and inorganic, to corrode. Whatever it touches will begin to break down within seconds of exposure in the form of rusting, rotting, cracking, and above all creating a black, mucus-like substance resembling the same one that coats SCP-106's body. I have a fairly strong stomach after researching the things I do for such a long time, but I will admit that photographs of SCP-106's effects render me a bit nauseated. The corrosive effect lingers and progresses for up to 6 hours after contact, regardless of the anomaly's presence or attempts to stop the corrosion. This corrosive ability allows SCP-106 to pass through solid matter, leaving a grotesque snail trail of black mucus in its wake. It is also capable of using its pocket dimension to vanish into solid matter, then reappear from another area connected to the initial point of entry. The pocket dimension itself consists of halls and rooms through which SCP-106 can stalk its victims to its heart's content. It enjoys the cruelty of the hunt so greatly that it has sometimes been observed to release its captives just so it can chase them down and capture them all over again. The containment procedures for SCP-106 have undergone multiple revisions since I first began reviewing the file. The more the Foundation has learned about the entity, the more information they have added to the official file. However, at every stage of the process, one instruction has persisted. No physical interaction with SCP-106 is allowed at any time. Any physical interaction requested must be approved by at least a 2/3 vote from O5 Command and may only be undertaken in AR-2 maximum security sites after a general evaluation of non-essential staff. All staff on site must remain at least 60 meters away from the containment cell at all times, barring a containment breach. If the entity moves beyond the planned containment area, then staff may do whatever is necessary to avoid being taken. SCP-106 must be contained in a sealed container made from lead-lined steel. The container is to be sealed within 40 layers of identical material, and each layer must be separated by no less than 36 centimeters of empty space. There's also a secondary containment area comprised of 16 spherical cells, each filled with various fluids and randomly assembled surfaces and supports. It is also outfitted with a light system capable of illuminating the area with at least 80,000 lumens of light at a moment's notice. All of these elements have been added over time as research and observation has indicated that SCP-106 can be confused by a complicated or random layout. It is also displayed in aversion to various liquids and to sudden direct light. If any corrosion is spotted on any of the containment cell surfaces, any surfaces within 200 meters of SCP-106, or most gruesomely of all, on the staff members themselves, it must be reported to site security as soon as possible.
A bear mauling you to death, being stalked by cougars in the dead of night, only to be eaten in your sleep. Wandering off the path and getting lost for days, the elements slowly withering you away to nothingness. There are plenty of ways you can die in the wilderness, but few would expect death to come as a result of a simple bodily function with a decidedly anomalous twist. Springtime in the Sierra Nevada is undeniably beautiful. The unpredictable storms of winter are a thing of the past, but the oppressive heat of summer hasn't yet crept in. The highest peaks of the mountains are still spotted with snow, but in the foothills, the wildflowers sprout from the earth, blooming in a tapestry of yellow, pink, purple, and orange. Crystal clear waterfalls roar down the rocky mountainsides, water set free from its slumber by the melting ice as the world wakes up from a long hibernation. The summer vacation crowds haven't yet flooded the hiking trails and ski slopes, but a few groups of early adventurers can be spotted hiking through the mountains, taking in the sights and breathing in the fresh, fragrant air. Among these springtime visitors are a pair of young men, one with blonde hair and one with dark hair, each wearing a small backpack and carrying a canteen of water, not a scuff to be seen on their brand new hiking boots. These two young men are on their senior spring break from college, gleefully taking the hiking trip they have been talking about since they were paired up as roommates their freshman year. Neither of these young men is especially experienced in hiking, but they have both spent dozens of hours in the library reading up on wilderness survival, on the best ways to pitch a tent, and start a fire with nothing more than a stick and 2 rocks. The lighter-haired of the two especially prides himself on his knowledge of foraging for edible wild plants, a skill he is excited to put to the test on this trip. His dark-haired companion is a bit more suspicious of wild plants, frightened by the stories of foraging gone wrong and unfortunate explorers confusing a delicious mushroom for one that stops the heart in minutes. He has filled his bag with provisions, with granola and jerky, dried fruits, and cans of beans that he hopes his friend will share with him, rather than risking his safety by gambling on a wild root or berry. Still, his concerns about foraging are soon forgotten as the two proceed further along the trail, passing sparkling waterfalls, bighorn sheep grazing on wild plants, and a bird that just might be a bald eagle soaring by overhead. The two are lost in the majesty of nature, so lost, in fact, that they forget to eat until the sun is dipping over the horizon and the world is growing dark around them. Out here in the mountains, with no light pollution to speak of, dark is dark. Even with the help of the lanterns they brought, the two men can scarcely see well enough to put up their tents and build a small fire. Still, they remember all of their reading and manage to set up a modest camp for the night. The dark-haired man pulls a bag of beans from his backpack and begins to heat them over the flame. He offers some to his companion, but he refuses. The blonde man has found a shrub that he recognizes, weighed down with ripe fruit. This shrub, he explains to his friend, is a species of manzanita, an evergreen shrub that produces berries similar in flavor to little apples. The dark-haired man is dubious. Aren't manzanita berries typically red in color? These appear to be a shade of brown. Wait. The young man reaches out and stops his friend just before he can pop the berries into his mouth. At least let me look them up on my phone. That won't work out here, his friend tells him. The government blocks access to the web out here. They don't want you on the internet. It's a big conspiracy. Everyone knows about it. Page unavailable. His friend is right. But wait. He has the ultimate tool to defeat this intrusion on his lunch lookup liberties because he has Surfshark VPN. Surfshark, the sponsor of today's video. The virtual private network that keeps your online identity safe by encrypting all of the information sent between your device and the internet. With the simple press of a button, he's able to change his location to somewhere well outside the Sierra Nevadas and access the blocked content, thanks to over 3,200 servers Surfshark has around the world in 100 countries that allow you to bypass censorship and geo-restrictions no matter where you are. And you don't need to worry about who might be watching you, since Surfshark masks your IP address to make sure that your city, country, and download history aren't linked back to your identity. It's the absolute best way to stay safe online and keep your personal information secure from whoever might want to use it for their nefarious deeds. So why not try it out for yourself? Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk. DrBob viewers who use my code DrBob get an extra 3 months free. So use the link in the description and check it out for yourself. You'll be glad you did. The wannabe forager insists that he has correctly identified the plant and that these berries will be his dinner. The dark-haired man shrugs and treats himself to a meal of beans and dried apples, while his friend munches on handfuls of the brown berries. He has no complaints about the taste, and does not immediately drop dead upon eating them, so perhaps he was right, and these are manzanitas after all. As soon as the thought crosses the dark-haired man's mind, he sees his friend double over, clutching at his stomach in discomfort. Afraid for his friend's safety, he rushes to his side, only to be met with a long, loud fart. The two share a laugh, the tension broken by the sudden, smelly outburst. but the humor soon fades as the blonde man farts again. And again, and again. All through the night, he continues to emit loud, excruciatingly smelly farts. The smell permeates the campsite, seeping into the dark-haired man's tent no matter how he tries to cover his nose with his sleeping bag. He doesn't get a wink of sleep, spending the night wide awake, staring at the ceiling of his tent, and silently wishing for the relentless stream of gas to stop. But it doesn't. It just carries on until the dark-haired man can scarcely remember a time when he wasn't listening to the maddening sound. Again and again and again, the endless farts. He clenches his fists until the knuckles turn white, clenches his jaw, and grinds his teeth. It's enough to drive a man insane. The next morning, it is still happening. The blonde man expresses embarrassment, but does not apologize for ignoring his friend's warnings about the berries. He tries to laugh it off, but the dark-haired man does not join him in his laughter. If he had only listened, they wouldn't be in this situation. They wouldn't be about to continue their hike with this rancid, gaseous albatross around their necks. As they pack up camp, the dark-haired man glances down at the tent pole in his hand. One good swing, and he could put a stop to the madness. No, that's ridiculous. He shakes his head, clearing the impulse from his mind. The gastrointestinal distress will pass soon, and they will be able to continue the trip like they planned. But it doesn't pass. Nothing passes, but the gas itself. The blonde man asks if they can stop for water before they've even been hiking for an hour. He isn't feeling very well, he explains. He woke up dizzy and nauseated, disoriented from lying there all night, breathing in the fumes. The dark-haired man wants to say something, to retort that he too was suffering all night. But he doesn't. He just lets his friend stop to drink some water, and they proceed with the hike. Gone is the magic of the previous day, the time before the cursed berries. The men can no longer smell the wildflowers, the crisp mountain air. There are no wild animals to be found, not a single ground squirrel or little bird. Up ahead on the trail, the dark-haired man catches the barest glimpse of a tail vanishing into the brush as a mountain lion runs the other way. Is it fleeing from them? From the stench? He wouldn't blame the beast if it was. They have 5 more days of this planned, and he can feel his resolve beginning to fade. Maybe he can turn back, ask to cut the trip short now, but why should he have to suffer just because his friend made a mistake identifying a wild berry? It isn't fair. If he could just get a moment to think without the incessant farting, if he could just have 1 second of peace, maybe he could come up with a solution. But no respite comes. If anything, it only seems to get worse. The smell burns his nostrils, the sound rings in his ears. The blonde man tries to speak over it, to clear the air with pleasant conversation, but the dark-haired man brushes him off with grunts and shrugs. His eyes sting and water, he chokes on the stench. He knows in his heart that he can't take much more of this. When the men make camp for the night again, the dark-haired man's thoughts turn dark. He could just leave in the dead of night while his friend is sleeping, rush off into the wilderness and abandon his companion there, freeing himself from the farts. He tries to justify it to himself. They both have the survival skills to make it. He'll be fine. His thoughts of leaving his friend alone in the woods are interrupted by the sound of chewing. Is there any animal nearby? No, surely no animal would approach, given the smell. He takes a look in the blonde man's tent and finds his friend eating another handful of those same brown berries. The dark-haired man flies into a rage, unable to contain his fury. How could he do this? How could he eat more of them after what happened the first time? Doesn't he understand what this is doing to him, what it's doing to the both of them? How could he be so selfish? The blonde man insists that it's fine, that the farting can't possibly be related to the berries, because manzanitas don't cause that sort of thing. At this, something in the dark-haired man snaps. He can't take it anymore. He turns away from the tent, throwing up his hands and telling the blonde man to find his own way back. They'll split up from here. The blonde man emerges from his tent, begging his friend not to cast him out. He's certain the farting will stop any day now. At this, it seems to grow louder, more potent. The dark-haired man spots a large rock by the campfire, small enough to hold in his hand, hefty enough to do some real damage. He picks it up and turns to meet his friend. Without thinking, he swings the rock at the blonde man's head. For the first time in days, the sound of farts goes silent. The air smells sweet, like flowers, leaves, and campfire smoke. He did what he had to do. The dark-haired man lets out a sigh of relief, the rock falling from his hand. He glances at the rock on the ground, at the blood dripping down its surface, and realizes the full weight of what he has just done. He packs up the campsite as quickly as he can, douses the fire, and dumps the body over the edge of a nearby cliff. Over the next few days, he hikes back the way he and his friend came, noticing, in spite of his gnawing guilt,
that the walk really is so much better without those damned farts. On the way, he passes that bush, that horrible bush, weighed down by the fruit that destroyed his spring break trip, that destroyed his friend's life. He opens his backpack, tearing a page from one of his books and grabbing a pen. He scribbles a warning, "No matter what, do not eat these berries," and affixes it to the bush. He can only hope that the next person to stumble on this shrub will see the note and heed its warning. If they don't, they might meet a similar fate. Days later, the park rangers discover the blonde man's body and declare the death an accident caused when the man fell over the side of the cliff. Some of them suspect foul play, but are unable to find any evidence. All they can find is a strange note on an unidentified shrub and the faintest smell of something foul, like rotten eggs. The two doomed hikers had no way of knowing this, but the fruit they foraged was not from the Manzanita family. It was from a plant known as SCP-4032. SCP-4032 is a wide, deciduous shrub characterized by a rounded crown and wider base. It produces a distinct, small, round brown fruit that has been designated SCP-4032-1. Whenever any animal or human consumes an instance of SCP-4032-1, this meal will result in intense gastrointestinal distress. I will try to describe this as delicately as I possibly can, but as I have learned over the years in my line of work, the truth is rarely delicate or polite. 1 hour following the consumption of an SCP-4032-1 instance, the person or animal will begin to emit an excessive amount of flatulence, consisting of elevated hydrogen sulfide levels and a small but detectable amount of methane gas. Perhaps you are familiar with an old rhyming song about the wonders of beans, the magical fruit. These berries function quite similarly. The more one eats, the more one does, in fact, for want of a better word, toot. However, unlike the second part of the bean-based rhyme, these fruits do not cause their unfortunate consumers to feel better, nor should they be eaten at every or any meal. The Foundation first discovered SCP-4032 on April 2, 2018, after a man named Anthony Green happened upon the plant in the foothills of Northern California. Hungry enough to forget his better judgment, Anthony ate some of the fruit and became immediately concerned for his physical well-being, as SCP-4032's effects began to take hold. Fearing he had unknowingly consumed a poisonous plant, he made a distress call to the local search and rescue team. This call was intercepted by Foundation operatives, who swiftly arrived at the scene to bring both Anthony and the plant itself into custody. The affected individual will continue to produce this flatulence until they have expired. Both starvation and dehydration have no impact on the flatulence, and no identifiable source of the gaseous output has been detected via endoscopy. If an affected individual finds themselves in an area without adequate ventilation, they will gradually begin to experience symptoms brought on by hydrogen sulfide poisoning, including but not limited to conjunctivitis, respiratory irritation and coughing, loss of smell, and eventually pulmonary edema and death. Shortly following SCP-4032's discovery, Dr. Logari began conducting a thorough observation of Anthony Green, referred to as D14478 for the purposes of official documentation, as he suffered from the effects of consuming SCP-4032-1. First, he was brought in for observation and placed in cell 14B on the outside of Site 88. Dr. Logari noted copious amounts of flatulence being emitted by the subject, with high levels of hydrogen sulfide and methane. 5 hours later, the subject was complaining about gas buildup in his cell, and the interior venting hood was activated. 3 hours and over 50 complaints later, the maintenance staff deactivated the interior venting hood and opened exterior windows. In an attempt to quell some of the relentless flatulence, D14478 was placed on an intravenous diet. After 2 days on the intravenous diet and no changes to the subject's gas emissions, medical staff conducted an endoscopy, which revealed that the colon was clear and there were no visible signs of rectal gas. The following day, a staff meeting was held in order to discuss the impact of D14478's condition on the quality of life at the facility. Both residents and researchers alike had complained about the persistent smell, which they were unable to escape, and was permeating the air outside as well as throughout the interior of the building. Several options were proposed, including relocation, treatment, and failing all else, termination of the subject. A resolution was passed to house D14478 in an outdoor facility until proper filtering equipment could be installed. A little over a week later, Foundation agents intercepted reports from nearby environmental watch groups concerning an increase in airborne pollution in the central Alabama area around Site 88, with D14478's condition threatening not only the morale at Site 88, but the environment itself. An additional resolution was passed in order to transfer D14478 into an experimental air filtering cell. The cell had not yet passed a safety inspection, but those with objections were overruled by the vote of the majority. The following day, subject D14478 was found dead in his cell. An investigation into the cause of death determined that the primary filter was improperly constructed, and both it and its associated sensor had malfunctioned. There was one silver lining to this unfortunate incident, however. The effects of SCP-4032-1 mercifully ceased following the subject's death. The post-mortem report was filed with the Ethics Committee, and Dr. Lugari was placed on temporary administrative leave. Meanwhile, a large order of scented candles was placed by the staff of Site 88, and soon, the unpleasant odor was replaced with the smells of lavender, vanilla, sugar, and pine. In Dr. Lugari's absence, Dr. Carlyle was appointed to the position of lead researcher on SCP-4032. Following the approval of the Ethics Committee, Dr. Carlyle began conducting a series of animal tests using SCP-4032. The first test subject selected was the Araucanian herring. An instance of SCP-4032-1 was crushed and added to a mix of copepods and krill, which were then fed to a small school of herring. 15 minutes after the consumption of SCP-4032-1, the herring's usual flatus production increased dramatically. This caused great distress to the school of fish, as this species ordinarily uses flatulence as a means of communication. Samples of the flatus were taken and analyzed, and were found to contain hydrogen sulfide and methane, though the levels of both were lower than they had been in human subjects. 3 hours after their initial feeding, the herring were euthanized and taken for autopsy and chemical analysis. There was no post-mortem evidence found of SCP-4032-1's effects. Next, a flock of chickens was selected for testing. They were offered a handful of SCP-4032-1 directly, which they refused to taste. The fruit was then crushed and added to chicken feed, which was fed to the chickens with great success. 2 hours after eating SCP-4032-1, all of the chickens began to emit gas containing low levels of methane and hydrogen sulfide. The chickens were promptly euthanized and taken for analysis, where an autopsy determined that the birds' short intestinal tracts were distended. This marked the first recorded visible sign of the fruit's impact on a test subject. The next animals selected for testing were brown-throated three-toed sloths. This particular species was chosen due to its lack of flatulence, as these sloths tend to absorb flatus and release it through their lungs, rather than rectally. The fruit was offered directly at first, but the sloths rejected it. The fruit was then crushed and ground with a mixture of tree leaves and fed to the sloths. Whatever happened next has been redacted from the official Foundation file, but it was disturbing enough to bring a grinding halt to any and all future testing of SCP-4032 on large mammals. Any potential animal experiments involving SCP-4032 must be approved by the Ethics Committee in order to prevent another, quote, sloth incident. SCP-4032 has been contained in a cordoned-off portion of the research gardens at Site 67, which consists of the area around SCP-4032's original location. This land was purchased by the Foundation, and a research facility disguised as a personal estate was constructed there. SCP-4032, along with several other anomalous plants, is kept in the garden portion of the site. All instances of SCP-4032-1 are to be gathered from the ground on a daily basis and incinerated on-site. Any employees found to be using the berries for unapproved personal purposes will be suspended or terminated from their positions. If any animals wander onto the grounds and consume the berries, they must be captured and euthanized, and their bodies incinerated. Though there is currently only one known specimen of SCP-4032, the Foundation has a contingency plan in place should any additional specimens be discovered. If this happens, Mobile Task Force Alpha 67 Weed Whackers will be dispatched to the specimen's location, where they will uproot it and bring it back to Site 67 to be contained. Any humans that consume an instance of SCP-4032-1 must be contained in holding cells B1 through B5 along the outer perimeter of Site 67. Each of these cells is equipped with 3 air filters containing Thiobacillus thioparus, chemolithoatrophic sulfur-oxidizing bacteria, embedded in a mixture of peat and polyurethane. Each filter also contains sensors intended to detect hydrogen sulfide and methane. When the sensors are activated, members of Mobile Task Force Alpha 13, Odor Eaters, are dispatched to escort the affected individual outside until the filters in their cell can be repaired. Currently, the Foundation does not believe there to be any additional specimens of SCP-4032 in the wild. However, there is no way to be certain of this, due to the plant's relatively unassuming appearance and the lack of any information on its origins. It is entirely possible that there are more of these shrubs just waiting to be discovered by an unfortunate hiker wandering off the beaten path. So if you find yourself out in nature with an empty stomach, make sure that you have accurately identified any of the wild plants you consume. If you don't, you may be met with a fate that is silent but deadly. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-2611, Large and in Charge.